So I've noticed you've been getting into Space Marine pretty heavily recently.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's been something I've been looking at for a long time now. I've been pretty excited about it. And I'm just really glad that we finally got a game that kind of revolves around, the Space Marines and this current technology phase, I guess you could say.
Hmm. I'm trying to think of other Warhammer games that heavily feature space. Most of them feature Space Marines at least to a certain extent. Well, there was Space Marine 1, there was Kill Team. Um, Deathwing sort of falls into that bucket as well, although that was a disappointing game for by like every metric.
Yeah, I mean, there is Bolt Gun as well, but that's more like a boomer shooter, kind of like back to Diablo, Doom 2-ish.
I don't think it's a boomer shooter. It's no, see, I think it's Z-Doomish. It's a modern reimagining of the concept, so I wouldn't even technically say that it qualifies as a boomer shooter. Boomer shooter requires it to be technologically primitive,
True, that's a
and
good point.
bolt gun is just none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does make good use of the pixelated aesthetic, so that's something that it has going for it. Have you played Deathwing at all? Have you had any exposure to it?
I have not. I have not. Surprisingly, 40K has like a whole bunch of titles and stuff like that. The thing is, I just haven't played any of them, really. That's they've had like a bunch
Mm.
of mobile games I've kind of dabbled in every once in a while, but yeah, it's not exactly the best. You know what I mean?
I know Tacticus. I've tried playing Tacticus. There was another one, the name of which escapes me right now, which was a base building game, something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
There was a base building, city war strategy game-ish thing that existed at one point, but I think it's gone
Mm-hmm.
now. But yeah, that was a thing at one point.
Well, I mean, Tacticus, yeah, Tacticus just seems to be a better made mobile game as well as a mobile game can be made, given the inherent limitations of it. Um, my first exposure to Warhammer was through video games, despite it being just a vast, vast property. And it seems that a lot of people usually just lock down to a specific part of the hobby, and a few people just ascend to doing everything, or at least most of the things.
Yeah, well, that's like in everything. Yeah, like some people just want to do the models and painting and stuff like that. Some are just strictly tabletop, and then there are those who are just interested in just the lore.
I really like the lore, with the exception of certain more modern parts. I'm generally not happy with certain retcons that have taken place, but I am a known stickler for classical lore, yeah. What else? What else? I almost got into painting minis. I was very close. I got to the point of looking up tutorials for how to correctly paint. I was torn between Legion of the Damned and A Thousand Suns.
Oh, painting. That sounds like a really expensive avenue for that game. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's well, that depends on how many minis you paint and why are you painting them. If you're doing that for the purpose of engaging in the actual tabletop war game, then yes, that becomes a very expensive hobby. And I'm really not at a shortage of those anyway. Yeah, the only thing that stopped me was going into onto YouTube and looking at footage of actual war games of like how the game itself plays out. What is the ultimate purpose of me spending an upward of 6 hours painting an army and then having to repaint certain segments of it as I got better at it? And I decided, no, I don't want that. I want nothing to do with anything of this.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a lot. Plus, you gotta take care of them, like store them properly, and I guess it'd take a lot of space just even to store that stuff.
Yeah, I can see it taking up an entire study. A friend of mine is getting into painting. I'm not sure if there are specific storage protocols as far as, just not having any direct UV light fall on them. I don't think it's that meticulous and
Oh God,
technical.
damn,
Mm,
that sounds crazy.
yeah. Oh, he's really I mean, he is going ham on the hobby. He bought like three separate copies of the Lion, the Dark Angel Primarch,
Wow.
because he wanted to paint one now. Yes, he wants to paint one now. He wants to save one for resale value, and then he has the third version of the same model to repaint a couple of years later when he's gotten better at painting.
Oh wow, so he's kind of like a collector as well then.
Basically, yeah, he's trying to move around some of his more expensive hobbies. He's eased out of sports shooting, so he no longer expends a lot of money on ammo. Although he still likes to buy his nice expensive guns, but he shoots them less, so it's making some space for him to move into painting minis.
Yeah, well that's good. I mean, saving some money is always a good thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, as long as it make like what is the point of saving money if it does nothing for you? So I'm very much on board with people who make good use of their resources to pursue things that give them pleasure and, make their time enjoyable.
Oh yeah, that's true. As long as it's done responsibly. Don't want to break the bank and not feed yourself.
Listen, the first rule of gun safety is have fun, and the first rule of finances is I'll deal with that later.
Yeah, I understand that. It's pretty much how it goes, especially when you're investing in something that, you know, big projects and things like that you enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's a healthy balance between just YOLOing several credit cards into a hobby and then pursuing that like the dragon mount maxing, just sitting on a pile of money that just doesn't do anything. There should be a healthy balance struck between those.
Yeah, it's like what they say. I mean, you can't spend money in heaven, or hell for that matter.
Yeah, basically. I don't think I don't think the 401k carries over, so
Nah, nah.
fair enough. Do you dabble in any expensive hobbies that you'd be comfortable sharing?
Expensive hobbies these days? Not really. I mean, there's this whole thing I'm doing now, yeah, but nothing as far as like collectibles and stuff like that. It's just mostly just gaming. I mean, my duties usually
Mm-hmm.
take up most of my time all the time, so well, no time I have for myself, I spend it here with whoever's willing to spend time with me, and things like that. So there's not really much time for anything else, really.
I see. I see. Would you like to go in depth on like your recent appearance upgrade?
Well, it's kind of like, let's see. Well, originally I wanted to do like more of a fantasy-based thing. But when I started looking at the kind of games I play and the things I share, I realized that doesn't exactly fit. It doesn't really match, the appearance-wise. Because I do like horror, I do like
Mm-hmm.
shooters, and I do like survival games, and I just figured that, it'd be probably better off if I shift to, the more Android and more tactical route since it matches the kind of things that I play. So I think it was worked out.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a very good fit for you. I think the first time I spotted you, you were playing Zomboid, and you were doing so with some hellish amount of difficulty mods, basically bringing it up to a point where I would probably just look for a can of bleach to drink.
Yes, when it comes to survival games, especially zombies and stuff, or even Minecraft for that matter, I I guess you could say I'm
Hmm.
somewhat of a masochist when it comes to those games. I like to have punishing odds to go against. Um, so odds of survival is lower.
Do you approach those from a meta hacking perspective? Like, for example, did you feel the need to make Zomboid more complicated because the standard meta was already solved and it got boring and less exciting because the game is just figured out at this
Oh
point?
no, no, I'm not really much of a meta player. I mean, the game as it by itself, vanilla, is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. It is
Hmm.
hard, and especially when the seasons change, if you're not prepared, you're gonna freeze to death or starve to death. So that's really like if you
Hmm.
can survive the zombies, that's the main thing that will kill you for most people if they're not prepared for the winter. But it's more
Hmm.
like immersion. I want it to be very hard, like as close as it can be.
Ah.
So like you go down, you won't really find much guns, really. If something bites you know, you don't want to be touched by anything. And I would just like to change like some of the quality of life stuff, like the whole Tetris Tarkov inventory. I feel fits perfectly for the game rather than a list of things you just click and drag everywhere. So it kind of forces you to like make choices on what you're picking up and all that stuff. So Yeah, just merge it.
Mm-hmm. I see. That does make a lot of sense. I think Zomboid probably got the closest to something that basically makes up an immersive sim. Just the depth of the sandbox and the detail to certain things like crafting. It sets a very good baseline that then modders can try to build upon for certain like areas where they would have a little bit more expertise than the devs themselves, because it's not entirely fair to just expect the devs to have something that's completely exhaustive.
Oh, by far, it as a zombie game, it is the best, survival horror one. Well, maybe not horror, but it is the most hardcore, I guess.
The worse you are at the game, the more horror-esque it becomes, I think.
Yeah, I guess if you're not really used to it too. If someone's not really used to zombies or, big print situations, we have high pressure and high stress. Yeah, I could heighten things for them a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, the jump scares thing still gets me on occasion.
Oh yeah, yeah, when like that little like music jab they put in there with something's like behind a door or window when you open the curtains.
Yeah. Whenever something enters your cone of vision, yeah.
Yeah, it does a really good job.
Yeah, yeah, you can sort of presage it in most cases if you listen. When you're used enough to the game, where you can pick up environmental cues of like, okay, there are clearly zombies here, so I'm opening this door and I expect the sting to come. In these cases, it sort of just falls flat. But then again, you look out a window unprompted, and then the sting will probably hit you. I like that about it.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't even happen too often, which is great. It's not like every single door, every single window,
Mm-hmm.
and even like it does a good job at raising the tensions and with just simple things like you hear a door getting pounded on somewhere in the house. Like you go upstairs, you can see the door
Yeah.
shaking. You're like, okay, so there's definitely a zombie in there, but then it raises the question: how many zombies are in there? Because it could be just one, or
Mm-hmm.
you could open the door and there's like a whole party full of zombies in that room for some reason, and then you have 20 of them flooding out, and then you're done. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always a toss up.
I mean, the game does, yeah, it does a very good job of punishing you for being complacent. Like if you get comfortable, if you think that you got this figured out, you walk into a house without checking your corners correctly, you open a door, you panic, you fall over, and you lose your
Yeah,
progress.
yes, sometimes R&D just gets you, and you're right. Like, I've had playthroughs in the game where everything's good. I had like defenses, I have stocks of food, and my skills are high. It was going great. And I went to a place that I've been in before. Then this is easy. I've been here plenty of times, and then
Hmm.
I get a scratch, and then there you go, I'm infected. That's it. All that for nothing. Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm like, oh man.
uh that is the experience. That is the value proposition of the game, which it's fine.
Yeah, games that do stuff like that with permadeath is really good because it raises the stakes really high.
Have you played a lot of Hunt Showdown?
I
Sounds like it would be up
I
your alley.
have not. I think I played it like once. Not on my account, but I played it once like years ago, maybe like a year or two ago.
Hmm.
And it was really fun. It was hard because you're using like old weapons, right? You aim down sights and the irons are like so tiny. You're like, oh shit, what can I see with this thing?
Yeah, the irons are not great. It's not great quality of life, which is by design.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, as it should be because it's the Western times, right? It's like crappy shit. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, we should be. It takes certain liberties with being realistic. Like, for example, I don't think that firearm suppressors are just readily available for most the larger cartridges at the time, or at all for that matter.
yeah. I don't think many people even considered what those are or how they would work at that time, too, when you think about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Nagant, if I recall correctly, the Nagant revolver was actually suppressed because it has that enclosed chamber of it, because it's a closed loop system, so it can be suppressed, and I think there were historical precedents of it being suppressed.
Oh, really?
But everything else, like having a suppressed lever action, yeah, I think that's a little bit novel.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, that game looks gorgeous. Like the scenery and everything is really cool. It would have been nice if the zombies were a little bit more threatening because they just like, you know, there. But you don't really care about them. If they had more of a threat presence, it'd be nice.
Well, I mean, yes, the smaller there are variable levels of threat presence. I mean, there are area bosses that usually like suck up a lot of your attention, but the main source of your threat is always going to be other players, and I think that's the core design of the game.
Yeah, but any extraction shooter, that's the main thing you can be worried about. And
Mm-hmm.
what I like about that game is that there's a bounty system. Like even if you don't get to the bounty, you can still get stolen from you at the end. So you still gotta be on your toes, even
Yeah.
at the second half of the game, especially because everyone knows where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that does appeal to me. I can't find the time to sink into it to be good at it. And apparently there are like various metas for playing the game. There's the sort of stealth-ish meta where you crawl around, you listen for footsteps in the distance, and you go through the map somewhat meticulously. And then there's the high speed, low drag approach of, basically playing it like Call of Duty, which I think some people have had success with.
Yeah, I mean, if you have like a balanced team where some people are more aggressive and while others are more defensive or cautious, I think that could
Mm-hmm.
do a good job at flushing people out or make it so enemy players can't exactly plan against your team, in one way because they have unknown variables to go against then at that point, which is nice.
Yeah, what I've played with some friends a couple of times, and the most success that we've had in duos is when my friend, who actually knows how to play the game, engages in firefights, and I just rush people from the flanks with a melee weapon.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so we got like different different fields of where they have to engage. Yeah,
Yeah,
pressure and all that.
yeah. Since I can't aim in those conditions just because I'm not good with the gunplay of the game, I would be more useful trying to run up, or I would either create openings by scaring people out of the bushes, or at the very least, like distract them for long enough and score some hits and let my partner finish them off.
Yeah, that'll work. I think it'd be really awesome if somehow you can master the bow because I've heard that thing is like the deadliest thing. Plus, there's natural silence in it. So if he could master that from many distances, then he'd be like a really deadly player. I think.
I mean, given that they recently introduced bullet drop, the bow just because everything is now less convenient to use, the bow has inadvertently received a gigantic buff now.
Well, yeah, because if you already know how it works, how the drop works, then you already have the knowledge to, to engage people more effectively. That's pretty cool. I didn't know they did that.
They've apparently, well, they did that in a recent engine update, and people are complaining that it doesn't really make sense because the maps are more compact than they appear, and the bullet drop is a little bit too extreme at those distances.
Hey.
So there's a bit of a balancing act. Yeah, Crytek is known for jumping the gun, and then having to spend some time sort of overcorrecting. So we're gonna see how that pans
Yeah,
out.
I can see that, especially if there's people who actually know the weapons in real life, those kind of parts, and how exactly they work, and their effective ranges and such. Yeah, I can see how people could put that under a microscope and say, hey, this gun does not really drop that short. It actually go much further. The same thing kind of goes about with like shotguns in most
Yeah.
games, and like Call of Duty example, you gotta be like relatively very close in order to use them to actually kill people, but in
Hmm.
reality, shotguns have a pretty far range. Those things could reach pretty good and do a lot of damage at a pretty
Yeah.
decent range.
I mean, depending on how a certain shotgun is patterned, yeah, even with birdshot, the groups stay fairly close, like the fairly tight groups, even at up to 100 yards.
Yeah.
So yeah, and because of gaming, yeah, we have that perception of, yeah, you just point it in the general direction, and like 20 yards out, it just becomes a cloud of
Yeah.
kisses, as opposed to, actual lead balls shredding
Yeah.
flesh.
Yeah. So it's like, damn. I kind of wish shotguns were portrayed more accurately. But then again, they'd probably be really busted at that point because, mostly in most video games, your engagements are pretty medium range, you know, or close range.
Hmm.
It's not very far range, so
Yeah.
unless you're playing like something like Armor or something.
I'm trying to remember if Ghost Recon handled shotguns any better, but now that I think about it, I never ran shotguns just because DMRs were sort of do everything weapons there
Oh, yeah.
because of how the sandbox were set up. Yeah.
I had not played a Ghost Recon game. I want to try those out.
I think that would be very much very much your speed, especially since well, the last Ghost Recon was what Breakpoint, and I think they're working on a new one.
Oh, really? Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not very happy with recent Ubisoft
Oh,
releases,
yeah,
but
Ubisoft.
since Ghost Recon is yeah, Ubisoft you be shitting it up, but listen, it is what it is. Apparently, the stakeholders are raising a stink about that. They're demanding that the CEO steps down. So nature seems to be healing to a certain
I really
extent.
hope so.
Assassin's Creed Shadow is about to release and lose money, so hopefully that will trigger some kind of contingency.
Well, if you want to hurt a company, the best way to speak is with your wallet, you know? That's really it. They could say all they want online, but at the end of the day, it's how much money you make.
See, it's not that I want yeah, it's not that I want to hurt them. I want them to make games that I would spend money on again because I very much enjoyed it's not early Ubisoft, but like old Ubisoft, things that happened around the first reboot of Prince of Persia,
Eh,
the Sands of Time trilogy, or yeah, Assassin's Creed up to 3, maybe stretching it out to Black Flag.
I heard Black Flag was pretty good.
Mm, the thing about Black Flag is it was a horrendous assassin game because it was just barely an assassin game, but it was a terrific, just a magnificent pirate
Ah, yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah.
Best of its generation, just hands
Yeah,
down.
it's hard to find a good party game at all, really, when you think about it. That's one genre that's not really
Well,
explored too often.
Black Flag was that.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Eh.
the last good game before Black Flag that was like pirate centric was probably Sid Meier's Pirates, which was what 20 years
Oh,
prior.
wow. Yeah, it would be nice to have like a more of a pirate game. I mean, you could probably make a construction shooter out of a pirate, out of pirate theme. That'd be pretty cool. Go hidden treasure, come in with your ships.
Isn't Sea of Thieves basically that? I've never played it. It kind of never appealed to me.
I don't know. I know it's pretty popular.
Skull and Bones was supposed to be a good pirate game, but
It
it
was terrible.
kind of languished in development hell. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how they managed to just make a game that's actively worse than a 15-year-old game made by the same developers in the same office.
And they boasted as like the first quad A game to come out. Quadruple
Quadruple
A
A
game,
game,
and I was
yes.
like, this is shit. Sorry.
I mean, sort of prophetic if by quadruple A we just mean that's the current generation of high budget games being predictably shit. He was not wrong, but not for the reasons that the guy thought.
They just need to start making games where it's not, you know, busted or broken when they release it. This whole thing in the past couple of years where big companies are releasing games in the like half-assed state and they'll just fix it later is kind of crap, man. It's really getting on my nerves because there's bugs, um, your features are
Hmm.
missing, it's not working, clipping issues. It's like that used to be like a stain on a reputation for a company to release a game like that. No one ever would ever thought of doing something like that back in the day, you know?
I think they got complacent because of the capacity to put out hot fixes because everything is now connected to broadband internet. Everyone is online. Everyone has some sort of library management software. You're no longer locked into a situation of you ship a game and it just lives there.
Yeah.
Granted, if you're doing that on console, yeah, for example, like Sony charges you for putting out updates and patches and
What
whatnot.
to do?
But in
Oh.
the grand scheme of things, it's yeah, well, because it makes use of their infrastructure, it's taking up bandwidth. They need to push the update. It needs to be scheduled.
Okay.
I think
Makes
Xbox
sense.
does the same thing. They also charge for for pushing updates, but again, it's a minuscule number compared to just doing good QA. So it's cheaper for them to have the community complain about certain things, document them in bug reports, and then they'll release and push a hotfix for it. were included into a bigger patch that was coming up anyway.
Ah, so annoying.
And that's just the unfortunate math of it.
Yeah, I think like Cyberpunk was a prime example of that because I think it's not really like the devs' fault. It's more like the people in charge. I think they want to push that game out in it, to get like the Christmas sales at that time because it's coming to what Decemberish time frame.
uh,
When the game was really not ready yet.
I don't remember when it released. I'm trying to recall the exact timeline of everything that happened with Cyberpunk, and I think it was a combination of corporate overreach because they were in fact trying to hit some kind of specific date. I think there was also an issue of corporate messing with the development cycle of it to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent because the feature set that was set out initially for when the game was just under development uh was bloated, and then it was further bloated, and I believe the product changed hands a couple of times between different teams. So that also usually tends to cause a loss of vision, so to speak.
Well, if they had like a few more months, it would have been good. It would have been fine. The release would have been fine.
Uh, I'm not sure because I think the crux of a lot of their post-launch issues was them hiring a QA agency that was just not staffed with people who knew what they were doing.
Oh.
So they did spend on QA. They did pay for the quality assurance, but they outstaffed it to an external agency that basically did not have the competences that they were selling.
Ah, they get
And
bamboozled.
then CD Projekt Red, yeah, and they never checked internally, so that's why they were blindsided by the QA not being up to snuff. That seems
Aye.
to be a consistent pattern with a lot of companies right now. A lot of companies like CD Projekt Red, like 343 Industries,
Yeah,
they've for some
343.
reason outstaffed a lot of the actual product work. Yeah. RIP Halo. It was nice while it lasted.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny with Cyberpunk how like the game's kind of, it's all about going against the corporals and stuff. Yeah. In reality, the corporals are also screwing things up too. So I was like, that's kind of funny.
I I wouldn't say that it's a corpo kind of problem specifically for 343. Their issue is that people with product vision, for one reason or another, get replaced in the company. They either through just their natural movement or, people wanting to exit the industry, which also happens from time to time.
That's true.
And for some reason yeah, for some reason they try to I guess it's a book balancing exercise as well, like hiring someone full time to create assets or to do programming work or do engine work is a long term expense because hiring someone is expensive and firing someone is expensive. And generally, you don't want to fire people, but long term, a good professional in the US is going to cost money. So, because of that, they go to outstaffing companies, like in the case of 343, that was Spirisoft.
Oh.
And that was especially funny because Spirisoft is a St. Petersburg based company. So St. Petersburg, Russia, not Florida. And they handled the bulk of development work, like actually working with the slip space engine for Halo Infinite. And after the war started and sanctions were imposed, Microsoft had to cut all ties with Spirisoft because they're a Russian company.
Ah, okay.
And 343 lost the keys to the engine, and they couldn't make any edits to any of the maps, so they had to reverse engineer a lot of the stuff.
Ah, yes, that's always a problem when like the people who know the code are gone, and then well they can't. They're stuck with
Yeah.
holding the bag. That's exactly what happened to Arrowhead with Helldivers. The people who wrote the code for that engine aren't there anymore, so now they're kind of stuck with this big batch of
Really?
spaghetti that they're trying to, fix. That's what having a lot of hard time, fixing bugs and things like that. Yeah.
I did not hear about that. That's
Yeah, I
interesting.
think one of the devs or community managers said that.
Ah. Well, I wouldn't take. See, community managers are a pet peeve of mine because just I have visibility on how community managers are usually recruited and what what kind of information they usually have access to, and it's not always reliable. The way I describe it is the community team usually doesn't know a hole in the ground from their own ass, which is like it's that happens a lot. It's not a universal between all game dev companies, but it has a tendency to be fairly consistent.
True. I mean,
So,
they are just,
because
the
I wouldn't
middleman, so to speak.
yeah, basically it's someone who's it's a glorified call center basically. They're there to relay approved messaging from the dev team to the community or collect gripes from the community and put out any kind of immediate fires that can arise from certain changes or perceived changes or things like that.
Yeah, and it's been seems to be a trend that a lot of community managers and like not just Helldivers but other franchises kind of overstep. You know, their power,
Yeah, they are known to do that.
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, some of them have a tendency to power trip because they think of themselves as insiders, and usually they're also given moderation privileges for things like social media and discords. So I guess it goes to their head.
Yeah, I've seen that plenty of times. So it's like, wow, they should lose their jobs or at least their possession.
I mean, I would never advocate for someone to just outright lose their job, but some kind of disciplinary action, some kind of corrective measure would be nice.
You know, it depends on the severity, I suppose. Case by case basis.
Yeah. If you don't correct certain behaviors, they're just bound to be repeated, and that is just the unfortunate fact of it. Like if you don't show people that you just can't do certain things, they're gonna keep repeating those behaviors.
That's true. Yeah, I could agree with that.
Yeah, it's generally interesting to see what Sony is actually going to do going forward because they have the very polar opposite cases of products releasing in their ecosystem now because they have Helldivers on one hand, well, Helldivers and what was that other Scarlet
A Stellar
Blade?
Blade?
Damn, I forget the one with the Stellar Blade, the one with the pretty Korean girl.
Yeah.
So they have that on one hand as being very obvious financial successes and being sort of products made for the target audience.
Uh-huh.
And they also have Concord that is just a horrendous
Concord.
flop out of the gate.
No one asked for Concord.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, to be fair, see, people don't usually ask for anything. It's most products, if they're good products, they're going to be designed for an audience, and then you explain to the audience why they're supposed to want the thing. Like no one asked for Helldivers technically, but it was just such a good fit, and the gameplay cycle made so much sense, and it was just well designed and well executed that it instantly picked up with everyone. Because up to that point, everyone was fully content just playing Starship Troopers.
That's true. The problem with Concord, I think, is that it didn't really bring anything new to the table. You know? I mean, you got Overwatch 2, which is,
Hmm.
what,
Hmm.
free? You know? Like, gotta do
Yeah.
something innovative to, compete with something like that. And, uh,
Yeah, your value proposition you need to either execute the same thing significantly better, or you need to do a thing that is novel.
mhm.
And from reviews I've seen of Concord, they kind of failed at both. They tried to make a hero shooter, but they also executed the actual hero shooter mechanics fairly poorly.
Yeah, it was like a perfect storm of all sorts of wrong that really feels like Dead on Arrival, really, across all sort of things. That, of course, attacking the
Yeah.
fans that you try to sell a product to, of course, it won't exactly work in your favor. Which I've noticed a lot of that happening these days, whether it be games, movies, things like that. It's like,
Mm,
why would you
yeah.
do that? Not smart, not a good look.
I I have two theories. I think well, there are two competing theories. On the one hand, I think it's a product of just a crisis of competence. There are just not people engaged in the product who have the professional wherewithal to kind of put their opinions on a shelf and not go into opposition with people who are their prospective customers. They can't take on any kind of criticism, and any kind of criticism causes them to aggressively lash out, and they don't know any better. Or It is a calculated attempt at rage-based marketing.
Yeah. Like, well, that old saying where any attention is like good attention or something like that. You know what I mean?
Basically, yes, yes. So you'll still have some kind of secondary publicity from people who are hating on the product because they're still going to be discussing the product, and you hope that the people who are negative about it are still going to be a minority, but they're going to be a loud complaining minority, and then like the negative attitudes of people who you assume are bad people are going to be like an incidental advertisement to your actual core audience. I think that's the thought process behind it. It's not a good thought process, nor a very well calculated one, but I think that was a bet in certain situations.
But I think that technique would probably work more when it comes to like movies and shows because if you do it like that,
Yeah.
people will probably like rage watch just out of curiosity alone. Like, is this really as bad as people say it is? Because you don't lose much when you're watching a movie. It's like what, 2 hours or maybe
Mm.
30 minutes, something like that. But with a game, you got it
Do they
and you
even
got
make
it
two? Do
forever.
they even make 2 hour movies anymore?
Rarely they do. Rarely. Every once in a while there's one that comes around, but
Yeah.
it's not too often anymore. This is what, money like an hour 30, hour 40, somewhere around there.
Yeah, yeah, they're usually like 90 minutes, and maybe if the movie does well at the box office, they'll release a 2 hour director's cut.
I remember watching this one movie. Oh man, I don't know how long that was, but it was so long it actually had an intermission, which was so wild. Like, you actually had to, yeah, there's actually
Ah,
intermission to let people have like 5, 10 minutes to go, get snacks or, go to the restroom and stuff. It was a Civil War movie, I think. Gods and Generals or something like that. But it was incredibly long. Like, my goodness. It was wild. I was like, wow, I've never seen a
hmm.
movie ever released since that had an intermission in it.
I think long form movies were sort of replaced by series now. Now that people have discovered that you can have long form storytelling through like a Netflix
Oh
series.
yeah, like Game of Thrones, for example.
Game of
Yeah,
Thrones probably did that first. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because each one was what, like 40-minute
Basically,
episodes,
yeah.
something like that. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
pretty long
Mm-hmm.
for an episode.
Yeah, I mean, that was the rare good contribution of Netflix, basically. They've established precedent that you can have more involved storytelling and something that can go outside of the 90-minute format. You just chop it up into smaller episodes and you release that piecemeal.
Now the problem is, can we get series, long form stories that are actually good? I mean, like what they did to the Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings. That's
Oh.
yeah, yeah, that was. Oh God, yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on there. Like even Disney had the good sense to cancel the Acolyte, though the rare Disney W of realizing that we're just not making a good case for ourselves. Although realistically, that call should have been made before it ever aired, or at the very least after the pilot aired.
I mean,
Or maybe it was just a sunk cost fallacy at that point. Like we've already filmed it, there was no going back. It's already made.
true. It could have already been like in the can, basically, just doing post production stuff at that point. So they really have no choice but to release it because it's already,
Mm-hmm.
someone has already spent that. You would think that, after all these failures you see, time and time again, that they'd actually get proper experts to, advise them on what's going on and these, the lore, not to bust the lore and all that stuff. Because if you're gonna release a series that already has a core audience, you would think that you'd want to keep the core audience while at the same time bring people in, new people in. But instead, they're just banking on bringing new people in and just like kicking out the core audience. That sounds so backwards to me.
I think it's a problem of too many cooks in the kitchen because they did have The Mandalorian as an attempt to appeal to old core fans. Because the success of The Mandalorian was it basically not being horribly bad
Eh?
and also not conflicting old lore and somewhat heavy-handedly, but still good in a good enough fashion, baiting fan service like in a good
Yeah.
way. For example, I don't know. fucking the Mandalorian stumbling upon, just incidentally happening upon Boba Fett's old armor that was recovered from a Sarlacc pit. That's a little bit too convenient. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of on the nose. But given that the story that they're telling and the experience of it and the Mandalorian generally just being a very competently executed spaghetti shooter, it strains suspension of disbelief, but like you staying in is more pleasurable than actively fighting the story that you're being
Yeah, yeah.
told. And that's why The Mandalorian worked, but then it was punished for its own success, and now you have episodes with Jack Black and
Oh
Lizzo in it.
yeah, yeah. The first two seasons I think were the best, and after that kind of started the decline. And you're right. I mean, people will sometimes complain about nostalgia baiting and stuff like that, but if it's done right, it's not a bad thing, you know? Like, this Luke Skywalker in his prime was really good.
Yes, that was a fantastic scene. See, if the nostalgia baits me into something that is nice and pleasurable to look at, if it's baiting me into a good experience, I'm not going to argue with that. Incidentally, about the Luke Skywalker scene, there were rumors that Kathleen Kennedy just flew into a rage when she found out that that scene was included.
Really?
Like she was just
Hmm.
generally not happy that that was snuck past her. I assume it conflicted with her plan of building up a new cast of main characters that was supposed to phase out the old guard entirely,
Yeah,
and that sort of flew in the face of that particular plan.
well, she's been killing them off one by one, so. Ah, yeah, poor Han Solo. What a way to go.
To be fair, listen, I don't think Harrison Ford wanted to play more Han
Yeah,
Solo.
it's pretty much known that he's kind of like he's been trying to distance himself from that for years.
Yeah. Yeah, he's cashed out. I don't think he's complaining. Mark Hamill has nothing else going for him.
Hmm.
Um and he is becoming increasingly insane with age.
Yeah, he's turning into the Joker.
He is basically turning into an IRL Joker. That is apt.
Yeah, and I mean,
He's turning into a Joker that's making cringy Star Wars metaphors for like everything that happens in real life.
right. But at least, I mean, despite how crazy he's become, yeah, at least he wanted to uh, portray Luke, properly the way he's meant to be, versus what they
Yeah.
forced him to be.
Well, because yeah, well, that's because it's probably the last big role that he has left. Because other than that, um, what other consistent appearances does he has he had recently? He's had a comedy show cameo. I'm trying to remember. It's I think it was an HBO show. What We Do in the Shadows, I
Hmm.
think was the name of it. So he has a cameo in that one, and like he's serviceable. He's okay as an actor. He's not groundbreaking. And yeah, he still has the Joker, although unfortunately his Batman counterpart is no longer with us.
Yeah. Rest in peace, my
And I'm
man.
not.
Yeah, I saw Mark Hamill in a horror movie actually. It was like some weird movie where it was like one of those things where you're stuck on a plane and there's like a storm and there's like a spirit or something and they're killing everyone off.
Hmm.
It was kind of funny. I was like, what the hell? Mark Hamill? What the hell's he doing here?
Listen, he still gets work, and I see why he would be attached to Luke Skywalker because this is just his most consistent portrayal. This is a role that he is most known for. Probably the role that still pays some amount of royalties to him,
Yeah,
and I can see him being protective of the character,
yeah, yeah.
but still not protective enough that he would just let the House of the Mouse just whip him into playing well whatever arc Luke was given.
Yeah, I mean, he tried a little bit, but ultimately, I guess must have thrown an ultimatum like, you want to be in or not? So,
Yeah, probably. I assume that that check was nice and lavish. Like it was enough money to make him hold his nose.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess. I'm actually surprised that you survived that whole ordeal
Yeah.
with the fan fiction trilogy.
Chewbacca, I think yes, I think he survived, and I think in the third movie, Mark Hamill still has a role as a Force ghost. So
Yes,
the
yes.
character is still sort of he's still sort of there. while they're still stretching the concept of Force ghosts and continuing to take the Star Wars lore to Harvey Weinstein's couch.
I still think it was so lazy that they brought back Palpatine in that because
It
it was
well,
so
it
lazy. Oh man.
it was it could have been done. It has been done in the old canon, because there was a Return of the Emperor arc. Because in the old lore, he did have a set of vat-grown clones that were supposed to be there for his spirit to repossess them.
Isn't
So that was a beat that was pursued in the old lore.
isn't that
Yes.
what Snoke or whatever that guy was supposed to be?
Apparently that was never outright explained, but I think based on what we were shown in the actual movies of the new lore, Snoke was supposed to be like a malformed defective clone.
You know, despite having such a crappy name, I thought that dude was a pretty cool villain. He had definitely had the presence, and the intimidation factor to be like a cool villain, but it just killed him off.
He was built up very well in the first movie.
Yeah.
He was built up in the first movie, and and apparently, I guess was Ryan Johnson was the director of the second one. He just didn't know where to go with the character. There is a secret conspiracy that Ryan Johnson is actually a disaffected Star Wars fan, and he just wanted to tear the entire trilogy down.
Yeah, well,
Just see the whole thing burn.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. I still don't consider the
I mean,
sequel trilogy as
if
an
that's the
actual
case,
trilogy. Like, the canon, I'll accept it. It's just not so much wrong with it.
well, I'll just stay within the the expanded universe lore because it's better lore that was written to a higher standard of quality by people who actually know what they're doing. So that's why if I ever reach for a Star Wars game, I'm probably going to be defaulting to something that's a little bit older. So maybe Knights of the Old Republic games, Jedi Outcast games, very pleasurable. I recently replayed Republic Commando for a game that was released in what, 2006, 2007?
Oh, that was a cool one.
Still a very competent offering.
I would like to have more games like that. The grunts, you know?
Well, they're not grunts, so to speak. They're still like commandos. They're still
Yeah.
like even they're elites among the clone army, but yes, still treated as effectively expendable, still doing sort of the dark-ish dirty work in the background.
I'd like to see, like, either a game or a series that revolves around the rank and file guys. Like, just the normal resistance soldiers or, like,
Well,
just the normal stormtrooper. Because I remember there's a scene in Solo, God, that was awful, but there's this brief scene where it shows, like, the stormtroopers in, like, a battlefield. And that looked so cool. Like, mud everywhere, it's dark, lasers and stuff flying everywhere. That looked like so cool.
there were two Battlefront games that were specifically Star Wars. Not the EA ones, the older ones. Those were very good. They were very light on the story, but mechanically they were very competent. It had large scale battles with large numbers of participants. You could play them at LAN parties, which was very fun since broadband wasn't really a thing back at that time. So I've played a lot of it solo. And that was pretty cool because it had, for example, it had arenas that transitioned between vehicular space combat and just personal combat on ships. So you would have a part of the map that is just a giant empty box with stuff in the middle, with space in the middle for fighters and bombers to interact with each other. And then you would have hangar bays that would have interiors, so you could jump onto a fighter, fly out into space, participate in dogfights,
cool.
or you bypass the dogfights. Yeah, you try to go into the hangar, you land, and then you fight off whoever is there, and that sort of brought up a
That is awesome.
yes, and that was done like in the early days of it.
Wow, if they can only do that now, bring it in with Unreal 5, Oh my god.
The technical capability is there, and I think there was like the EA Battlefront game. I don't think it had combinations of vehicular and personal combat, at least not on that scale.
No.
it attempted certain things. Yeah, like it had the Battle of Hoth, for example, where you could. It was still very Call of Duty-esque in like the transitions of it.
Mhm.
It was momentarily enjoyable. I think they leaned a little bit too hard into attempting to monetize it,
Yeah, they did. They did.
because yeah, I mean EA moment.
Yeah.
That's to be expected. They've revolutionized and led the scene towards the deterioration of enjoyment of actual games that you pay money for.
I hear that the Arma modders actually made like, a whole Battlefront-esque like mod, you know, store like clone troopers,
Hmm.
stormtroopers, all they made levels that either took place in actual, one-to-one scale of battlefields that took place in series,
Hmm.
as well as redid all the models for the vehicles, like the lat fighters and all the weapons, sound design, everything. So it's
Hmm.
like an actual Battlefront game, but it's not, you know, legitimately a Battlefront game.
I mean, it's. I think we're in a place right now where we're sort of reverting back to good stuff being made by enthusiasts in their basements.
Oh yeah, because they have the passion.
Yeah, they have the passion, they have the understanding of the product that they're making. Because it's not enough to be passionate, it's you need to have some kind of stake, some kind of investment into it without an expectation of a financial upside. And that way you're going to end up with a good product again. I think that has to do with the fact that like we've come full circle, because the development tools that are just available to the layman are sophisticated enough that you can make a product that's like playable. Like the Unreal Engine is just out there. It's basically open source. Same with Unity. So you can have a single person who's willing to dedicate like 20 hours a week to building a thing that they really like and they really understand in depth, and it's going to be a solid product. And if you make certain allowances for, yeah, sure, the graphical fidelity is not there because they don't have an entire art department and 10 different 3D designers uh, meticulously rendering every sort of
Yeah,
caveat of the armor, for example, or of the vehicles. But the core intention is there, the gameplay loop is there, and they're able to do that with very constricted resources. And on the other hand, we have the overfunded people who don't really care about what they're doing. They're just there to collect a paycheck and maybe be activists in the
yeah,
interim.
you gotta have the core foundation. Definitely. The core loop.
Yeah.
Once you get that, then everything else is just like icing on the top. So just make a good game and people will play it.
That actually reminds me. Yeah, basically. That reminds me. Speaking of like things done by enthusiasts. So you're aware of the Dawn of War games, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
So there are two versions of that. One is called the Apocalypse mod, and the other one is the Unification mod.
Oh, okay.
But basically, what it does is it turns vanilla Dawn of War into the closest thing you can have to an interactive, real time war game in the Warhammer setting,
Ooh.
because it adds a ton of like standalone factions with their unique rule sets. It expands the unit base. It expands the unit caps. It introduces larger maps. It basically does everything that Relic wanted to do in the first place, but didn't have the time, resources, and realistically just the technology to do certain things. Like you couldn't render maps with that kind of unit count, and for example, a Titan walking in the background on the hardware of the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That wouldn't have been commercially viable because no one would have been able to run the
Uh-huh.
game. But in 2024, that's no longer an issue. I can have my gigantic, endless horde of constantly resurrecting Necron
Oh god,
warriors
that sounds
with a
horrible.
gigantic Necron Titan walking in the back.
That's so cool though.
Arguably, that is completely broken, but that's my favorite way of playing that game now.
That's cool. Wow, they should just like hire that person and then
Yeah,
remake the game and re-release it, remaster. I mean, remasters are a thing now. It's just do it. Why not?
my understanding is that that's what a lot of modders aspire to do, and some actually manage to do that. That they put out these large scale projects. they use that as a personal portfolio of I did this thing, and they use that when they're applying for jobs within the industry. So hopefully, some of those people are getting absorbed into the
They
scene.
should. I mean, that's a lot of work. It's not easy, I imagine. It kind of reminds me when you said that. Kind of reminds me of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day before, where some guy managed to make like a better game than the day before, on his own,
Hmm.
and it was stable. It was like some broken ass mess. God, that game had so much. I had so much hope for that game, but damn, it was so bad.
Oh, I'm starting to remember now. The day before it was marketed as a
Yeah,
survival.
as an open world. Yeah, as an open world zombie survival apocalypse game, where it had a central
Mm-hmm.
hub,
Mm-hmm.
and you could trade, you could do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out to be some like half-assed extraction shooter that was so broken you can't even do anything. Like streets were empty, you can't kill zombies. It
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
jank. Oh man, it was basically an asset flip. That's all it was. And ultimately, everyone got a full refund and it was removed. But no, at least I could say I played it.
Yeah, yeah. That apparently is going to be happening for some of those. Trying to think. Sometimes I don't see asset flip games as inherently bad, just not when you try to market them as some kind of large scale product and sell it at a $70 price
Oh yeah,
point.
plenty of games use assets
There
like
is a
that.
developer. Yeah, yeah. Well, the name of the developer escapes me right now, but I think it's a Taiwanese developer on Steam, and he just has a portfolio of small games that are obviously made either out of Unreal Store assets, or just an assets that the guy made, and then he just keeps reusing them and repurposing them for different game styles. But he has like a platformer, and he's made a dungeon crawler shooter, and then he has like a strategy game,
Hey,
and
wow.
it's poorly translated. It's jank as hell. The UI isn't great, but he manages to make a gameplay loop that is enjoyable
Ah,
every single time. Like he started with something that was just a glorified Slenderman
uh-huh.
simulator, and sort of is ramping up the complexity of the things that he makes, and each one of them is like a $5 or $10 game.
That's pretty cool.
They're yeah, they're definitely worth that and significantly more. And I like to support small devs like that because there's something there. Someone who's making games like that, he understands what the core product is supposed to be, and I'm willing to forgive certain rough edges in terms of their
Yeah.
production quality as long as I'm able to enjoy the core product.
Yeah, it's that thing like if you make a good game that people enjoy, they can forgive like graphic fidelity. You know? I mean like stuff
Yeah.
like Soma, for example. It's graphic wise, it's kind of janky. Graphic wise, it's not the best, but the story is really good. The
Hmm.
gameplay is pretty good, and people love it. And does have to be the best. And after all these years, people still like it. You know, so that
Or Pal World,
Palworld, yeah,
it has no
yeah, it's the
story.
story. What it does is
Yeah.
just really pieced together in a weird way. You gotta like find notes and things everywhere and kind of figure it out.
Well, yeah, there's like rudimentary environmental storytelling that they're currently attempting. I think a more fleshed out story mode is on the roadmap. It was mentioned at some point
That'd be interesting.
because it's still an early access game and they're still actively developing it, which is nice to see. It's nice that they didn't just decide to run away with the bag.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
I like that they made it as a throwaway project, just as a funny thing to
Mhm.
do. And then they're like, "Oh damn, we almost outsold
Yeah.
Pokemon."
It does have a lot of potential still. I mean, I'm waiting for like more stuff. I used to play the crap out of it, but I'll wait till like that's actually 1.0. Let's see.
Mm-hmm. They've recently added a lot of stuff. I've played a lot of it when it came out, but then Tekken 8 released, and that's my primary
Uh,
game, so I just didn't have the bandwidth to play both. And so I recently logged back into Pal World, and there's like, oh boy, there's like new currencies, new game modes, a whole new tech tree, and I'm just like a whole new area,
wow.
and I'm like in over my
So
head.
it's practically a brand new experience then at that point.
I wouldn't say it's brand new, but it's definitely being built upon significantly, and I like to see that. I like to see that the developer is directing the funds that they've collected from the initial early access resale it back into the game, and they're still developing it into a final product.
That's good.
Yeah, I've heard certain whispers from inside the company stating basically they were just overwhelmed with their own success. They didn't expect it to go off like
Ah,
that.
so now they have to be committed.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah, it's very likely that they were half expecting to receive a Nintendo cease and desist any day
Yeah.
now. But since that never materialized and the game actually sold well, they're actually sitting down to plan out a long-term strategy for what to do with the product because it's going to be live service to a certain extent. It makes use of server infrastructure, so that needs to be reinforced.
Yeah.
And now they just need to be very meticulous about the bug fixes, the sandbox development, and now they need to develop a story for it.
Yeah, imagine those, what's like one of those rare cases where they're suffering from success. You don't see that too often.
Oh, yeah, basically.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good.
And I think their development budget was in total like $10,000, and that was the salary of some guy who was just a gun otaku who was learning Blender and wanted to make gun animations, and so he was just in charge of doing
Like
everything.
10,000, that was it? Oh,
Yeah,
holy
that's it. That
shit.
was the development budget for the
Oh
entire
my
game.
god. Wow. And they made that? That's really impressive.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
they've sold. I'm I'm blanking on the sales numbers, but I think they sold something like 13 million copies
Yeah.
in the first week.
Yeah, it was insane. It was like everywhere. It was the talk of the town. It was great.
And to be fair, it's also a well-designed game just from a gameplay perspective. The gameplay loop, I have a little conspiracy theory of my own, just based on how the game is set up, how um, resource mining, how resource utilization works, how automation is set up. I think the game was made by someone who comes from a free to play game background, someone who's
Yeah.
worked inside of a gotcha game, someone who understands how to set that meta up.
Okay.
And they know how to design reward expectation loops. They know how to keep you engaged for long enough so that once you actually do the thing, the dopamine hit comes in just strong enough to keep you playing and grinding. And
Ah.
usually you would want to add additional bottlenecks of monetization either to keep progressing or to cut down on the grind to make it sort of less involved, less time
Yeah.
consuming, less bothersome. But they've just made that they've designed a premium game that doesn't require intermittent monetization while making use of understanding those reward and expectation cycles.
Ah, yeah, if when it comes to incremental dopamine hits, gotcha developers are the masters at it. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's an entire behavioral science behind it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really cool. And what makes it better for Paul World is that you can mod it. People can mod it. And that's like the best part.
Mm-hmm.
Because like games like Left 4 Dead 2, for example, the only reason why people still play now is because you can mod the shit out of it and turn it into like a whole new experience.
To be fair, there's really not a game that offers that kind of same gameplay loop still to this day.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? It's still too bad they never continued the Left 4 Dead series. I'd like to see a third one.
Well, they sort of attempted to continue it because Back for Blood was supposed to be sort of a soft sequel, but I'm not sure whatever happened to it. I think it was just so poorly executed that it sort of just died.
Yeah, it's just because, well, for one thing, they didn't have mod support, so that's a big hit right there. And
Oh.
secondly, the versus mode, where in Left 4 Dead, it's basically you got like 4 players, trying to go through this scenario, and then you got
Hmm.
4 players as special infected spawning in, every once in a while to try to stop them. And Back for Blood, it was basically um a wave. It's a wave mode, so you got all the 4 human players stuck in like one area, and then every once in a while, the 4 special infected players could just drop in anywhere they want, which is kind of lame. Like, why wouldn't you want to do it like follow the same formula as Left
Mm.
4 Dead? Try to do a scenario just with, enemy players. They didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not broken, don't
Yeah,
fix it.
yeah. So that's what kind of ruined that part. No one ever played that. But yeah, the fact if they had mod support, it would be great. I think it'd still be alive and kicking.
It's kind of odd that any games try to release without mod support at all. That's just an odd uh, decision to make. I think Skyrim has proven that the way you
Exactly.
solidify
Yeah.
a game is, yeah, you give people the tools or at least the means to make new games out of it or adjust the experience. And yes, it does sort of invite the jokes about, oh yeah, you just have your community finish the game for you. But at the same time, again, Skyrim on release was a competent game for the time.
Uh huh.
Usually RPG heads like myself, there are some certain gripes to be had with it streamlining the character build and whatnot, and it basically just being a glorified adventure game as opposed to an RPG. But it was still very solid for the time, and it having full mod support enabled the community to keep the game up to date, fresh, and keep it relevant for decades forward.
Yeah.
And that's why Todd the Liar was able to just sell it
Todd the
on
Liar.
the Switch, on new releases of everything, like new OS systems. And that's why you have people who are basically rebuying the game 5 times over because I don't think it released on Steam
No, no,
originally.
no. It's not originally.
It may be blank. Yeah, there you go. So it introduces more avenues to resell the games. For example, someone would have lost their original disc, so now they want to rebuy the key or they want to rebuy it for a console. Like I bought Skyrim, I think twice
Eh.
because I moved countries and I had my Xbox on me, but I didn't bring any of my games, and I still wanted to play Skyrim, so that's why I went out and bought Skyrim for the Xbox again.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely modding is the way to go to make your old games to continue on. Like, I really hope that one day that Airhead will allow
Yeah.
Helldivers 2 to allow modding. I mean, people are still doing it, but
Mm.
that would change. That make it so much fun. I mean, you see stuff like people running around as clone troopers, and you got Tom's the Tank Engine crashing into things. It's like, what the hell's going on here? This is chaotic, and I love it.
Yeah, the more deranged, the better. I'm a full proponent of that. I would like to see a scenario editor for Baldur's Gate 3
Oh yeah, that'd be
because
cool.
I profusely dislike the campaign,
Uh-huh.
but I like the engine. Despite it being 5th edition D&D, which is a little bit lobotomized,
But
but I want to see. Well, listen, it's simplified. I understand that it's made for a generation with attention span problems,
okay.
and
So
certain
it's dumbed
issues,
down
certain
then.
things were simplified. It was dumbed down. It was dumbed down because, for example, I think removing the alignment requirements was not a great choice
Wait, they
because
did?
alignment created stakes.
Oh
Yes,
no,
5e does not
but
have
that's
alignment.
isn't that like basically a traditional core thing of it though?
It's a traditional core thing. It forces you to play certain characters certain ways because certain prestige classes and certain
Yeah.
races will have a limitation on behaviors. So, for example, it would force you to play. For example, you want to play a Pale Master, and that means you can't be the village hero because you need to maintain a non-good
Uh-huh.
alignment. I think the limitations are you need to be at the very least lawful, like, you need to be neutral or evil to have the Pale Master class, which is like the closest thing you can have to a playable Lich
Yeah,
character.
okay.
It and it stops you from doing things that would be setting breaking, like for example, being a lawful good Lich.
Oh yeah, that's kinda weird. That's kinda weird.
Well, it's things that shouldn't make sense because just by nature of undergoing the lich process, you are supposed to like lose parts of your humanity, and you're supposed to be the callous necromancer who makes puppets of other people's bodies and tortures their spirits and
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah. So now you can be like a good lich, I guess.
Yeah, Yeah, like it creates sort of removing the alignment system creates nonsensical scenarios of, for example, I don't know, I'm a reformed power lich. Yeah, sure, I sacrificed 300 souls to the dark gods to gain immortality, but now I'm totally reformed, and I donate half of my ill-gotten proceeds to a local orcish NGO.
I mean, I guess the only way that would kind of work is if there's a good backstory that justifies how and why that could be accepted. Um, like maybe like a lich
I think
who
it
would like resurrect like someone dead, right? So they could give like some like a murder victim or something, and say, yeah, this is the person who killed me, you know. So they could point out the criminal or something, something like that.
in the D&D setting, you don't have to be a power lich to do that. You just need to be a low level necromancer to do that.
Okay, yeah, that's true, huh?
Well, not okay. Low level is probably pushing it, but that's like a core mechanic. For example, in Baldur's Gate, Speak to Dead is like a common scroll, and that's a common story element. You would raise bodies and interrogate them for information.
Yeah, so useful. It can make a good business out of it.
Basically, yeah, it's a little setting breaking just because of how it's set up, and I think it's a little bit like it's a cool element to have. I think there was a CRPG that made. I think Arcanum was the first one to do that in any kind of developed setting. Like that was the first game that had dedicated dialogue trees for characters that were dead, but then you raise them and then you interrogate them, which is it's cool for writing. It's a cool story element.
Yeah,
It's very easy to make it unbalanced. And I think there should also be an alignment penalty to doing that. Like for example, you can't be a paladin that does that.
yeah, that's like
You know what I
that's
mean?
like blasphemy right there.
It's
Yeah,
sacrimony. Yeah, well, it's basically blasphemy for most mainline sort of good aligned paladins. If you're a dark paladin, yeah, that's an entirely separate discussion. But generally, is with necromancy supposedly being a frowned upon practice, you should then limit certain character builds from having access to doing that.
yeah,
So if I am a paladin of tier, I should brute force my way through those, and I shouldn't have those convenient shortcuts that I can take through use of dark magical arts, because that would be inconsistent for the character that I'm playing. But if I'm, for example, playing a necromancer sorcerer who just does not give a shit about like the means that he's using,
yeah,
yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll cast a necromancer spell. I'll torture this dead spirit by pulling it out of the ether, but I will gain information, and I will not have to go through the more difficult, more winding path of gaining that information for maybe having a penalty and having certain storylines blocked off for me further on because I am an evil sorcerer
yeah.
character.
That's it makes more sense. So yeah, I guess I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it creates stakes, it creates limitations for your characters, but that makes the role playing more
Uh-huh.
meaningful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why I would like to have a full scenario editor for Baldur's Gate, because again, I profusely dislike the storytelling.
Okay.
It's how should I say this? Some of the character writing is okay, but some of it is down bad and thirsty in that gross European way of going very much over the board with it.
Telling dad and this. Ah, yeah, yes, I've seen those things. Speaking of fantasy, have you seen like
Mm.
the footage of the next Dragon Age game coming out?
I have not. Was it announced somewhere?
It looks absolutely terrible. um,
Oh, to be expected, I
yeah, like,
guess.
jeez, what they did to Canary is so weird. Anyways, what came out was that the reason why it looks so bad, like graphically and gameplay wise, is
Hmm.
because it was originally going to be made as a multiplayer, um, like mobile game or something. But they decided that not
Oh,
to do that, so they gutted it and made it a single player game. And that's why you can't control your friends, your companions like other Dragon Age games.
you. What? It's a CRPG where you don't have any control over your party
Yeah, I
members.
mean, you could like set them, preset them or something, but like in the moment, you can't really do anything about them. This is what they're saying.
That's that's horrendous. Wow. I listen, I guess we just can't have nice things
Yeah.
anymore along, well, at least not from mainline established
Yeah, the
titles.
greenness is gone. Everything's like nicely bright and colorful, and oh jeez, I'm like, oh man, what happened to Dragon Age? It used to be
Mm.
so like kind of pretty grounded, as far as fantasy is concerned. But yeah,
It was, I think it was one of the early experiments in making fantasy games less fairy tale-ish. Like it
yeah,
was an infusion of realistic elements, like realistic politics, interpersonal drama.
yeah. I mean, and plus the whole choice system with Bioware was really nice too. Um, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
still not as good as like the Witcher games. I mean, they did it like really good as far as like the balance between politics and your choices impact like the rest of the story. That was really good. Kind of wish
Yeah.
they made more Witcher games. It'd be nice. And maybe one day.
Uh that I mean, that could also be a very much a monkey paw kind of situation there because I don't think the team that made the original three Witcher games is there
Oh
anymore. They are
no.
making, I think they're making a remaster of the
Oh,
original
that'd be
Witcher.
cool. I'll play that.
I played the original Witcher back in the day,
Uh-huh.
when it just released. I think Witcher 2 was out at the time, so I started with 1, and it was nice. Just, I didn't quite get into it. I was more of a Halo player at the
Ah.
time, but I respected that it was attempting to do something that's, novel and there's still a fairly large sandbox and they were describing a setting that was also very new
Uh-huh.
because well, Witcher is the only game that deals with that sort of Eastern European lore, and that lore
Yeah.
is very deep and very poorly explored in other popular
Uh-huh.
media. So that's why Witcher was so popular because like we're very used to the elf gnome kind of Tolkien derived
Yeah.
fantasy, and that particular lore was very very standoffish. It was predominantly Eastern European
Uh-huh.
Polish, but it also had certain Far East influences, Arabic influences, because it also featured like things like gin and
Yeah.
whatnot.
And also like different cultures too and stuff like that.
Yeah. If they managed to make Witcher 1 with the production quality of Witcher 3 without changing any of the content, that would be very much
Yeah.
welcomed. Maybe if they had some quality of life stuff, because even Witcher 3 is a very, very aged game at
Yeah,
this
you'd have
point.
to like have definitely quality of life stuff and maybe touch up on the combat system a little bit so it's not as janky. Make it flow a little better. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
If they do that, it's going to print money. It's basically going to be more of Witcher 3, which was a tremendous commercial
Uh-huh.
success. And, maybe at this point, developers in the AAA space will finally get the memo of maybe we want to set aside certain messaging that we would want to inject into established titles
Yes.
and we need to earn some money.
Uh-huh.
Can we hold off on the proselytizing a little bit until we're back in the black?
And don't give it to Netflix. No more giving it to Netflix, please.
Yeah, well, Netflix is a giving the license out to Netflix is a very separate can of worms. I'm not sure if Netflix even got. I think they licensed it directly from God. What is his name? Damn it, the
No, I
author of the
forgot it.
Witcher
It's
books,
it's it's just it's a name. Yeah, there
Sapkowski.
it is.
Sapkowski. I think they licensed it directly from him, and that's why they sort of used that as creative license to not follow the visual guide of the game.
Doesn't make any sense why they would do that. Oh, come on.
Well, they did it because they wanted to make it palatable to a more generalized audience because they wanted to go for a wider
Yeah, that's
appeal.
the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, they also had their own internal ideas of what a modern show should look like to pursue, and that was further diluting the quality of the
Mhm.
product. And on top of that, I just don't think they had staff that had the professional qualifications to bring something like the Witcher setting to life.
Yeah, like I mean, season one was decent, but that freaking scrotum armor just like
Uh,
that didn't
I was about to bring that up. The scrotum armor.
that did not exist in the game.
It did not exist in the
Or
game.
reality.
Well, again, I think there were probably certain licensing limitations there. I know that Sapkowski has a very bad relationship with CD Projekt Red now because of the structure of the license as it was agreed upon for the games.
Mhm.
Because he didn't believe in the games, he undercharged them for the license, and then he never got any royalties from the games that were coming out subsequently. He just charged them an upfront fee, and that's it. And he waived any
Oh,
kind of
that was a
royalties there.
mistake. Damn.
That
That was a
was
huge mistake.
listen. That was a mistake, and that's very unfortunate. However, it's kind of unfair for him to argue that they made use and just exploited his setting for profit, while he also borrowed very generously from Eldrick Meldebenet.
Okay, okay. So it's like hypocritical then.
It's very hypocritical. He still refuses to admit that he took he took significant inspiration. Let's be charitable. We'll say that he took significant inspiration from Michael Moorcock's works. He still refuses to acknowledge that there are like heavy influences there, starting from the way that his main character looks and operates, and up to and including, for example, the multiverse, the magic system, the setting. Like there are a lot of intersection there. A lot of intersections there that are just too close to be
Ah, okay, I
coincidental.
see what you mean. So it's like almost ripping it off, but not quite
Yeah.
ripping it off. Like almost there.
To be fair, a lot of fandoms did rip off Michael Moorcock's setting. For example, the idea of chaos, even up to the heraldry in 40K, is very similar to Moorcock's cosmology.
Yeah.
So it's like Sapkowski wasn't the first one to do it. He was just very blatant with the way he did
Oh,
it.
it's like copying someone's homework, but not quite making it too different, I guess.
It's it's like when someone takes a piece of code and alters it just enough for it to be legally
Yeah,
distinct.
sort of.
So it's not something that you can pursue, yeah, but it's also kind of obvious. But at the very least, like admit that you had influences. Don't say
Yeah.
that you plagiarized. Just say that yeah, like I liked the setting. I was influenced by certain elements of it, and then people are going to be more on board with you when you're going to complain that CD Projekt Red stiffed you for
Yeah, just
royalties.
be honest. People, honestly, even if you were in the wrong a little bit, it goes a long way for the goodwill of, the people out there. Definitely.
Yeah, just be upfront. Like, look at Uwe Ball. He's a happy camper right now. He was very upfront and open about what he was doing with his movies.
Mhm.
He was just basically defrauding the German government at the expense of the gaming industry.
Oh yeah, yeah. At least don't lie. Don't make up stories or excuses. Just take accountability. That's it. That's it. People like that.
Yeah,
Oh man.
I mean, we're definitely in a more shameless age where being that, just going with the chat, yes, I did it, I think is a better stance to take. Granted, it doesn't excuse all
Oh yeah, it doesn't
wrongdoing.
absolve you of anything, but
Yeah, but I think for things that are just like in a gray area, like what Sapkowski did with his writing, I think it's better to be more opened up about that. Well, yeah, back to the circling back to Witcher. I would like to see a more up to date Witcher, but I have very little trust in the current state of CD Projekt Red to execute it well. So
yeah.
hopefully they'll just outsource it to a company that knows what they're doing.
I could only hope. I mean, I think it would be nice to have like more fancy games this day and age. 'Cause seems like there's a lot of like more shooters now, right now at the moment. I mean, this year we and like early next year we see a lot of extraction shooters coming down the line. which is fine. I'd like to
Mm.
see like a little expansion of that kind of extraction shooter genre in a way where like fantasy, like Dark and Darker is like one example of it, where it is an extraction shooter. Well, not a shooter, but it's an extraction game, but you're, D&D
Yeah,
fantasy.
it's an extraction dungeon crawler. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of that.
There's a Korean game. There's a recent Korean game that recently went into playtest. I'm not sure if the playtest is still
Oh, are you talking
available.
about Neck One?
Dungeon
Oh, no, never mind.
Stalkers. No, Dungeon Stalkers. Yeah.
Dungeon Sockets.
What was the one you
Neck
said?
One. It's also an extraction type game, except you're like a civilian and it's a zombie apocalypse. So you gonna running out there. Yeah. So, what's the game you mentioned about dungeon crawlers?
Dungeon
Stalkers.
Stalkers. Stalker.
Okay, what's that?
Yeah. So I think it's a Korean game. It's currently I'm not sure if the playtest is still going. I tried playing it a couple of times. It's a little janky, but I like what they're going for. The class distribution seems interesting. My only gripe with it is that if you're playing with randoms, it's not very easy to coordinate because you're supposed to coordinate what you're doing with people because you need to negotiate who's getting loot because loot is not shared between people.
Was
So like
oh.
if someone finds a chest, then he's the only one who's getting stuff, and it's like first come first serve.
Ooh, that could be. Oh,
And like it's difficult to coordinate
you'd
certain
have to be
things.
with trusted
Yeah, like you
people.
need voice.
Oh man.
Yes. So what happened to me? I beat the tutorial and I jumped into a randoms game with just like random people that were match made with me. And what happened was when you go through a dungeon, it'll go through like a battle royale kind of thing where the confines of the livable area are going to start collapsing in and of
Hey.
themselves. It's going to create areas where you take damage over time,
Okay.
basically. And it's forcing you to go into the boss chamber. But along the path, you will have portals that will let you extract early. So you can like pop in, grab some loot, get some kills, get some experience, and not commit to the boss run
Mm.
and just
Okay.
extract. And yeah, and those portals are single use,
Yay.
meaning that if someone uses the portal collapses. And I was in a situation of we're going through a dungeon with two other people. We're not communicating over voice. We're just sort of trying to, support each other, share some kind of resources. Like if I see that someone is low on health, I'll throw him an extra health potion on the
Yeah.
ground. And then as we're going through it, I realized that I took a detour to get some loot. The other two guys weird off. They've reached the portal, and I see them on the mini map, and they're like, such and such has activated a portal, and then boom, both of them are
Oh
gone. And I'm
no.
like, what the fuck?
They left you.
And the portal is gone. And I'm like, well, they just left me behind. The portal shuttered, and I had to find my way out in a dungeon that's balanced for three
Oh my
people.
god. That sounds terrible.
Yeah,
Did you?
I still managed, but no, I found a different portal and extracted through that one. I had to fight through some minor mobs on my own. Fortunately, I did have the consumables on me. Like I had my health potions, I had my combat casts and whatnot.
Huh.
And fortunately, since the game is kind of raw right now, the enemies aren't very sophisticated, so you can abuse their AI to a certain extent. But it did leave a fairly bitter taste in my mouth for having to deal with that. So I'm kind of in a place of I'd rather coordinate with other people to play this going
Was
forward.
there like friendly fire?
I don't remember. I think
Oh
there is.
shoot, that
Yes, I think
makes.
you can clip each other with
Oh shoot,
melee.
that makes it even harder. They confined spaces. But that makes it cool
Well,
though. Makes you gotta coordinate more.
yeah.
Gotta be more skilled.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to what you're doing. If you have, I think there's a combat caster class too, so that sort of creates a very interesting interplay of challenging certain bosses because bosses are balanced to be approached by multiple players doing different things. And I think there's a very good depth of tactical variance there. You have someone playing tank, you have someone playing ranger, you have someone playing battle mage, or you swap one of those out for a support class. Like there's some good depth there, and I think that the game looks cool even right now. And if it's continued develop, it's if it's developed a little bit more, it's going to be more fleshed out. It's going to be more fun. But that being said, I'm definitely not playing with randos anymore.
So, if he ever gets pushed into the boss room, that means it could turn into one gigantic melee between players and the boss? That
Yes,
sounds chaotic. That's crazy.
technically yes. That's a Well, I mean, Hunt Showdown sort of does that as well without contracting the map. Basically, you're just drawn by the bounties to try to pursue
Mhm.
bosses, and then you're sort of in the interplay of do you try to go for the boss? How do you balance the risk of being third partied by someone? How many parties are going to be locking in? Because usually when you play a set of Hunt, you'll engage the boss, you'll kill the boss because most bosses aren't that challenging once you know what you're
Yeah.
doing. You have the cooldown period for when the token is not yet dropped, but everyone can see that you killed the boss. And so usually you'll have a couple parties converging on you, and the ones that are a little bit more bold, they'll try to go into the boss room to third party you, assuming that you're still not quite recovered from the fight, or they'll try to lay ambushes and wait for you to try to run off with the token, and that sort of creates a very cool dynamic, very chaotic dynamic. It forces you to pay attention to what you're doing. I don't think that the dungeon crawler will do quite that, just because no range, well, no ballistic ranged weaponry, and the maps are closed down. You're always in closed spaces, but there's definitely going to be some sort of PvP element to it.
If they did have like a fancy type game that is has like the same gameplay loop, well, not much one, but similar gameplay loop as the Hunt, that'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Forests, swamps, you and
I
your party could go through. You
Yeah.
could encounter like, yeah, you could like have big dwarves, elves, or whatever.
I think that's what they're trying to do with Dungeon Stalkers. I'm not sure about Dark and Darker. I've never played it.
It's basically the same thing, just much slower paced.
Are there even a lot of like recent fantasy games? Well, like Dark and Darker naturally that made a big splash recently. Dungeon Stalkers ostensibly fantasy. What else do we have going on in that particular genre?
Let's see. I really don't know. I don't really look into the fancy genre too often. Mainly been looking at the shooters and stuff and horse things.
I remember seeing you post on Twitter about very specifically wanting an extraction shooter where you could customize your own sexy operator lady.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, why not? Cause like Tarkov,
Yeah,
for
no,
example,
listen,
doesn't have
I'm
it.
all for that.
Great Zone doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these structured shooters don't have that. And I think
Interesting. That's
Breakout Arena Infinite or Infinite Arena, whatever that is, that will have it eventually,
mhm.
which is cool. I mean, it's just a
mm.
cosmetic thing, but I think it'd be nice. I mean, it'd be cool.
It's cool to listen. Listen, I would play that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would make use of the female model, but definitely a nice feature to have. It's odd that more games didn't pursue that particular angle, especially with how popular gun bunnies are in certain parts of the
Yeah,
internet.
yeah. I saw that like, if you look on like comments on community pages and stuff on Steam, surprisingly, there's a lot of
Hmm.
people who are, well, I don't know who they are, but they push back on it. Like, don't put them in because it's not realistic. It's like you're playing a video game. At the end of the day, you're
Yeah,
playing a video game.
I mean, I mean, it's fine to have something that pursues that kind of sweaty, grimy realism, but I think there should be space for things to get a little bit more ridiculous, a little bit more um permissive,
Yeah,
so
I
to
mean, I'm not
speak.
asking for something go overboard. Not like Call of Duty. That's a little much.
Yeah. Well, listen, for one, in Ghost Recon, I'm pretty sure you could have just a fully customizable female character. I think that's a capability that's featured in the last one. That's a fairly old game. That's what, like
Yeah,
2016?
And even in games like The Division,
Yeah,
there's
you could.
female operators. No one's complained about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm pretty sure it's just a niche that has to be filled by someone. I tried getting into extraction shooters, like first person shooter
Uh-huh.
ones, but it looks like the field is oddly barren. Like you have Tarkov that is a premium game that expects you to pay for monetization, like quality of life
Yeah.
features, which I'm not a terrific fan of. I insist on your shit either has to be free up front for me to pay money
Uh-huh.
because I understand that value proposition. Sure, it's a free product, but it's also a live service product, and therefore I'm paying for its continued existence
Right,
and
yeah.
performance. I
Updates and
respect that.
dubs,
It's
yeah.
fine. It's a fine business model. Yeah. Or I pay up front for the box, I get a little bit of content, I get a more or less stable kind of build, but I get access to all of the normal features like I do in Hunt Showdown. I didn't have an issue for paying for Hunt Showdown because like I the core gameplay is
Yeah.
there, and then I'm not being juiced for any of the premium content unless there's like a very specific shiny thing that I want.
Right, right. Yeah, I get what you mean. That's where, like, uh, Breakout Arena, it's free. So that extraction is free.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any other extraction shooter. The gameplay actually feels pretty solid, you know? But it is free,
Mm-hmm.
so there are certain things that, if you want to get a little bit of an edge, maybe investing
Mm-hmm.
in money would be nice, like secure lockbox, for example. Um, Most extraction shooters will have a
What does that do?
so it's like a small little extra inventory space that's separate from your backpack. It's tiny. They come in various sizes,
Mm.
like 3x3, 2x1, 5x5, whatever it may be. But whatever you put in your secure lockbox, if you die, you don't lose it. Unlike Thrill Seeker. So when you go
Ah,
back to your hideout or wherever you
okay.
or base or whatever, you'll still have it. So you can put in like rare items in there, quest
Mm-hmm.
items in there, so you don't have to do the quest again, and that's nice. But since Arena
Mm.
Breakout is free,
Okay.
you don't get that. You can get them like through events and stuff, but they are timed, so you can
Uh-huh.
only have it for like 30 days. Or you can pay for
Okay.
various sizes of a lockbox, but subscription based. So it's maybe like what, $5 for like 30
Ah,
days for like a good sized box, for example. And there is you can also use real money to buy like in the currency that you get in the game, and in turn you could use
okay.
that money to buy like good gear and things like that. And therein lies
Mm-hmm.
the debate on whether the game is pay to win or not. On one hand, on one side of the fence, people
Uh-huh.
are saying it is pay to win because everyone can just swipe a credit card, get all the best guns, ammo, armor, and then go out and just like wreck everybody. And if they lose it, they usually just spend more money and get it.
Is there really that much of a performance disparity between like guns that you would get on an entry level and guns that you can buy for currency?
I know, and that's where like the other side of the aisle is like saying it's not pay to win, is because someone could have the most decked out
Huh?
armor and stuff, right? They have the best guns, the best ammo,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, if someone goes in fully decked out and you're like you have like the crappiest stuff, you could still kill them and get all their stuff for free. All their paid stuff that's worth like several million in-game
Okay.
currency for free because you killed them.
Mm-hmm.
And despite all the armor you get, there's
Yeah,
no
that's
armor
a
protecting your legs. So if you leg shot
oh,
someone to
fair
death,
enough.
it may take more hits, but it's unprotected. So it gets just leg shots. Leg meta is what they call it. Just take out the legs, kill them, then there you go.
Uh-huh.
Get all their stuff.
So basically, with the current balancing, and that's not permanent because the game I believe is still in early access.
It is, yes.
Someone whaling, yeah, someone whaling the currency and just buying kit and then dropping into a session is more of a mark for everyone there than a menace.
Yes. Yeah. So they could still die, they still get their kit, and then you have a lot of good stuff all of a sudden. Um.
Hmm. But I guess it sort of chalks up to how wide the skill gap should be between someone who would be able to take on a whale like that.
Yeah, it'd be a skill.
I guess that sort of would make or break that
Uh-huh.
argument.
And dum-dum rounds are really cheap. These are the rounds that do like big damage to flesh versus not so great against armor
Hmm.
penetration. So you want them cheap ammo, just take out the legs. And you're really good at it, outmaneuver
Okay.
them, or, outshoot them. And if I mean they could have all the best
Hmm.
stuff in the world, but if they're a shitty player, then what's the point of having all those shiny things?
Yeah.
So
That actually makes it even more realistic in the like from the perspective of, for example, IRL, I don't know, tactical LARPers and whatnot. There's a cohort of people who overspends on kit and they try to build it out like very sophisticated. They have nice plate carriers. They have all of the nice night vision tubes and the night vision compatible red dots, but then they can't run a mile in their own kit.
yeah, exactly. They just can't support it. So yeah, that's the argument there. Yeah, LARPers, basically.
Yeah, yeah, basically that. So I guess that's kind of a realistic element to it. Someone can just whale all of that stuff and still get their shit pushed
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
What would be the benefit of getting the expensive kit? Like what does the expensive kit get you? What does it do?
Really, nothing. I think. Personally, for me, the one that joys about playing strategy shooters is the progression. You start off with very little, and
Hmm.
then you work your way up. And you find stuff, you upgrade, and you just get better and better as you go along, and you learn. That's
Hmm.
that's that's what I enjoy about extraction shooters. Versus if I were to get everything, all the best stuff at the very beginning. I mean, sure, it'd be fun to play with at the start, but then the novelty will wear off really fast. And then what am I working
Yeah,
towards?
what's
Yeah,
the
what am I
purpose
working
then?
towards anymore?
Where's the journey? Yeah.
So that's that.
That's interesting. So Arena Breakout, you'd probably recommend that as a means of trying to get into a modern-ish extraction
Yeah,
shooter.
if you want a means to not spend money, and just to get into that genre, just to see what it's all about, how it feels, how it plays out. Because extra shooters, they may have differences and all, but they essentially like the same in a way. Like how all architecture is the
Hmm.
same, all etc. etc. The battle royals are pretty much like the same.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's free, and it's
Hmm.
pretty solid because they originally made it for mobile, so they had like a mobile version for years now. So they're making busy
Oh.
using that skeleton and making it like a more robust version for the PC. It's not on Steam yet, but you can actually go to the website and download it from there and play for free right now if you wanted to. I believe you can still do that
Oh.
using their launcher, but it
That's
will
cool.
come to Steam eventually. So I did give it a try. It's nice.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's a good way to step into it and learn it. But for me, I think the
Hmm.
extra shooter that I will probably be maining will probably be Gray Zone Warfare because even though you can still die, at least you have a chance to get your stuff back because it's an one single open world versus an instance like Tarkov. You go in to raid. If you die in the raid, you can't go
Ah.
back in to get your stuff, or if you can't try to get some of your stuff back, it's over. That's it. In Gray Zone, you done the world, your body will be laying there, and unless the enemy strips your
Oh, okay.
body, you can actually go back and try to retrieve your stuff. Like if an AI kills you, you can.
It's like re-rolling a character in Zomboid, basically.
Yeah, you'll go back to base. I mean, you still have your stash and stuff, but you'll have nothing. You
Hmm.
respawn with nothing, and you can just run back, and hopefully your stuff will still be there. But if you die again on your way back, then it's over. Your previous body will disappear.
Oh, okay. Does Gray Zone have monetization?
Um, that's like in-game microtransactions. No, it does not. I mean, you pay for it.
Okay.
It's still early access though, so it's probably gonna be like maybe 3 years out
Hmm.
before it reaches
Okay.
1.0. But for a game that's roughly about 20% complete, it's pretty cool. It's like it's a different spin because there's three factions, and funnily enough,
Hmm.
Stalker, the Stalker series.
Yeah.
So the creators of Grey Zone are actually drawing um inspiration from the book Roadside's Picnic, which is the same, you know, book that the Stalker series was based off of.
Yeah, I know. It's the rough. How should I say it? It's sort of the roadside picnic. The Strugatsky book is a soft inspiration
Eh,
for the Stalker setting, as opposed to being its direct source material. Like the
yeah, yeah,
premise is the same, but Stalker kind of takes it to a very different place.
uh-huh. Yeah. So in Grey Zone, there's this in this very center of the map. There's this place called, I guess it's called like Ground Zero or something. It looks like there's gonna be like
Uh-huh.
three tiers to it. I guess severity, maybe there's radiation in there or not. But apparently there's gonna be
Hmm.
like anomalies and stuff in there too. Maybe even monsters.
Oh.
So yeah, the outskirts outside the zone is just like, raiders, bandits, things like that. Militia that you fight against, like,
Hmm.
normal people and players. But then the center's where the real mystery is at. Everyone's pretty excited to see, is this gonna be more Stalker Ash? When you like get there and when you start encountering supernatural things or mutants and stuff. So there's a lot of potential. So that would set this game apart from the rest.
That sounds kind of cool. Damn, you really sold it to me. I'm probably gonna try to get into it eventually.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it now. That's still. I mean, they supposed to have a really big update this year sometime, like towards the fall, where they can put in the day and night cycle some AI
Hmm.
fixes because right now the AI is kind of busted. Like they can burst you down from like over like 200 meters away in like an instant, and they get to see you
I
do
mean,
missions and stuff.
it is. I mean, it is sort of the Nom experience. You're dropping in, and the locals would have a better lay of the land. 200 meters is not an unreasonable shot, even with irons.
I mean, that's true, yeah. Yeah. But, like, you can't sneak up on them, look. And they
Yeah.
have, like, this weird hive mind thing. You shoot one from far away, and suddenly the whole town's on you. It's kind of crazy. Doesn't happen
Oh,
all the
okay,
time.
okay.
Doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it happens. It's like, what the fuck is going
Mm-hmm.
on? So,
Well, yeah, they probably just need to implement something that's a bit of a more granular alert slash awareness system, which is like it would be them building a rudimentary stealth element into it, which
yeah,
it's not too difficult to design, but they just need to implement it, I guess. But
yeah,
if the gameplay loop is there, it sort of makes sense to try to dip your toe in, especially if it's early access, it's going to be discounted, so you can just buy it now, and then you'll
yeah.
just get the full release when it does release.
I mean, the loop is there. They need to do some weapon balancing, which they're gonna do, when
Hmm.
this big update comes. Because, like, 7.62 ammunition, which is a pretty big bullet, isn't very
Hmm.
effective for some reason.
Oh.
Um, and some weapons are definitely much stronger. So they need more variety for weapons, more variety for attachments. They can revamp the
Hmm.
whole quest system, which is nice. So and it's a jungle, I mean, how many treasure shooters takes place in a jungle? It's like supposed to be like a Laos or something like that. So it's gonna be really cool. But this year there's gonna be a whole bunch.
Such as I just again, it's very opaque for me. The only one that I heard of was Gray Zone because I think I've seen you play it,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think James has played it. I don't think I've seen him play it at the very least. And I've heard about Arena Breakout because there was some controversy surrounding the timed paid access to the secure caches,
Yeah,
which
that
sort of put me off of it because I'm not a big fan for paying for air. Again, I'd rather just pay for something that's like a Gray Zone, where I pay for the game and I get the game.
yeah. And even in Grey Zone, even if you start off with a small secure box, you could do like a quest chain eventually, and you get the best
Hmm.
one if you complete it. It's a long tell,
Nice.
but you get the best one. But if there's another
Mm.
extraction shooter coming out this month, actually, on the
Oh,
24th, called The Forever Winter. Now, this one is crazy because you
okay.
don't play like as some like Super Soldier or anything like that. It takes place. It's like more like sci-fi-ish. It takes place in the
Hmm.
far-flung future, war-torn world. And you play as a scavenger. Like, You like the scavenger? Yeah,
Oh.
you have a gun, you have a backpack, and your job basically is to go out into the battlefield, scavenger resources like water, bolts, from the dead, from buildings and stuff like that, and make it back. And this whole time,
Mhm.
there's a war going on. So you got like giant mechs everywhere, gun mutants, running around too. Of course, enemy soldiers, robots that are trying to kill anything that they see out there. It's very gritty. It's kind of like gives me the feeling of um like the war against Skynet after Judgment Day. That
Mhm.
sort of feel, just more gritty and dirty. So I got
Nice.
yeah. So for me, looking forward to that one. It's that's one that's coming out. The other exciting shooter I'm looking out for is called Beautiful Light. This is more like if you like SCP stuff. This one would be up
Mhm.
your alley because, of course, the operators, you go into like some place where there's labs, stuff like that, do your abstraction, looters stuff. But the cool thing about this one is that the player can actually control one of the monsters. Like, and
Oh, okay.
you could hunt down like the human players, and it's not for a waste either because all the experience and stuff you get as the monster, you can either apply it to increasing your skills for the monster, or apply those points to which operator. So
Oh,
if
okay.
you want, you could probably play the whole game just playing as a monster and just hunting
Mhm.
people the whole time and just beefing up your monster if you want, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I really like asymmetric multiplayer. The game that I think sort of started it was Evolve.
Oh yeah, evolve.
Yeah, it was very cool. I really liked playing the Wraith because it was more like a stealth-based monster as opposed to the other ones.
Was that the squid one?
But no, the squid one was the Kraken.
Kraken. Yeah, okay.
Um, yeah, Wraith was the slippery like xenomorph alien looking one.
Oh yeah, okay. No, I remember now. Yeah, yeah. That was that
Yeah,
was that was one of the first ones like that, right? First kind of games that did something like that.
yeah, it was I think it was one of the first games that was like purely asymmetric because you were like playing very different gameplay loops because the hunters were team based, they needed to coordinate, they had certain mechanics, and then it was a question of just the solo monster working against their team play.
Yeah, and evolving too. So it's not just fighting them. You gotta like take care of yourself as well. Know when to strike, when not to
Yeah,
strike. Oh
yeah,
man, how long did that come out? Was that like
that was a while
2010 or
ago.
something? Maybe before then?
Maybe. No, I think it was 2010. I mean, we can just look it up. Let me quickly look it up on my phone. My problem with the game was that they relied a little bit too much on community feedback, so they kind of balanced it out of being fun into being artificially fair and arcadey, and I really
Oh,
didn't like that.
that's a shame. Do you think that a game like that, if say it did come out then, but it came out now, do you think it would survive?
2014.
2014. Okay, so 10 years ago.
Uh, That's a good question. I think that all of the mistakes that were made about it back then could still be made now. Uh, like what irked me specifically, like I was a Wraith player because I liked the stealth gameplay. It invited mind games and mind games that you play with real people. Like the way I would play it is I would make use of actual just physical visual camouflage of the wraith, for example, having a very low profile. So I would take a moss green skin and I would stay still in the bushes, which is like there's not a mechanic, there's not like a toggle for it being stealth mode. But if the players are not paying attention, they're just passively running around doing something. I could use that as an opportunity to sit them out or use that for ambush hunting. So I would have, for example, ambushed and picked off people from the team playing like that while they're trying to pursue me.
That's fun. Yeah, that was different styles of gameplay as the monster for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I understand that it's aggravating to play against someone like that, and that's why people were complaining that the Wraith is like infuriating to play against because it is a very mobile, very slippery character, and as a team of hunters, you need to have very good coordination to lock him down. As opposed to something like a Goliath that's just a big burning brute. He can't really hide from you, and it's a question of him being able to constantly outrun you, and it's a different gameplay loop, and games are more dynamic and they don't require as much active patience and attention from people playing. But I think that's what made it interesting, because if you're a hunting party, you should have different approaches for different monsters. You shouldn't expect all of them to function the same way. And like, okay,
Exactly.
yeah, we're matched up with a wraith, therefore we need to double down on certain tracking capabilities, have sort of passive measures in place, like trackers set on everything that would be a prey animal, stuff stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing against a wraith, you need to actively check your bushes. You're no longer listening for big audio cues. You need to be more granular with what you're doing, and then you wait for that thing to slip up, and you look for means of limiting its mobility, basically.
Yeah.
And the
Don't
community
rush.
just,
Take it slower.
yeah, yeah,
And
the
that's
community
it.
didn't want to engage with that, and because of that, they sort of nerfed it into the ground, and then released a DLC character that basically did all of the same things but a little bit differently. Like the Gorgon was just a new stealth character that did a lot of the same things, but the difference was you need to pay like 25.99 for that one to have all of the same things that were taken away from you with the nerfs.
It's kind of lame.
Yeah,
So that's kind of what I guess they didn't really pursue changing it up. So that's why the game kind of just faded away from memory, huh?
I I don't think, yeah, they didn't, it sort of fell off, and I think because of the overbalancing it created a bland experience. And even with the new monsters that were trying to mix up the meta, I don't know, I felt disaffected. They took away a style of gameplay that I enjoyed, and the reason I enjoyed the game, so I just dropped it and never played it again.
That's why I'm afraid that what's gonna happen to Helldivers 2. It's probably not gonna happen, but they're relying too much on community feedback
Mm-hmm.
at the moment. We'll see what this next patch brings, because they're definitely
Yeah.
doing everything the community wants, and we're gonna see what happens. But I just hope it doesn't become some cheap, non-challenging game. It's oh, this sucks. Part of having crazy games is the challenge.
Well, it's also a PvE game. Like, if
Eh?
something is like broken or, just ridiculously powerful, sure, you can try limiting access to it instead of nerfing the thing, because that
Yeah,
way it's still fun for people to use, and the only party that's being injured by it is, well, the AI, and the AI doesn't care.
yeah, that's exactly. I mean, don't want to like nerf things so no one uses it anymore, but at least tweak this a little bit. That's all you gotta do. You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as far as Evolve is
Especially,
concerned,
yeah.
you know how cool it'd be if they took like that concept and applied it to like a hunt showdown type mode? See, like Hunt Showdown has
Oh.
like the
Hmm.
bounties, right? Now, what if
Yeah.
those bounties were player controlled? The bounties themselves were players.
That would be interesting. And especially since they have roaming bounties now, that would probably be a little bit more viable. Because before that, bosses used to be they used to be confound to like a specific boss room where they would spawn.
Mm-hmm.
But Rotjaw, if I recall correctly, now spawns anywhere where there's a body of water. And the new one, I forget the name of it, something like Hellspawn, something to that effect. It's like a boss level immolator. He also spawns in like specific areas, so
Mm-hmm.
the roaming mechanic could introduce players to it. Whenever you have player versus player elements, you're again going to have balancing disputes and like experiential disputes, because it's supposed to be fun for everyone to engage with this.
Yeah.
So
I
cool
mean,
on the face of it, but yeah.
yeah, I think it'd be neat. I mean, maybe you don't have to give them like whoever controls the bounty is not like get like crazy skills. They still are only able to use the same skills that they have. But
I think that
Really?
would put them at a very big disadvantage compared to just the players freely roaming the map, because in Hunt Showdown, bosses are not the hazard. Bosses
Mhm.
are the mark. They're expected to be taken down. The balancing is such that they're fairly easy to kill. Your real Apex Predator is other players who outmaneuver you or outgun you.
Hey, that's
So
true.
I'm not sure anyone would like to participate in that as being the predetermined mark.
Yeah, there'd have to be some kind of really good incentive or reward for doing that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like money reward or
Yeah, like
something.
you especially since you can't leave the map because look, in the game in the extraction shooter cycle, part of the gameplay is you sort of weighing your risks versus, okay, I got this stuff and I can just extract, or I can
Mhm.
go ham and go pursue the boss, take the token, go through that kind of. I can, I balance cutting my losses or pursuing for the full cycle and like challenging other people on the map. As opposed to if you're playing as a monster on the map, your only option is just sitting there and waiting for players to run in and rock your shit.
I mean, if you're free
What would be the
roaming, you
win
could
scenario?
hunt the players. Or some kind of special, and not a mark, but it's like some kind of outside entity that
Yeah.
is not confined. You know, that'd be pretty neat, interesting. Like an enemy type or something that exists. It's like, oh, one of these things are here now. Gotta be a little more careful.
Let's see what they do with the new update. Basically, I think that just other players are very similar to that already, except that well, they're gonna have different loadouts. They're gonna have different tactics. Like again, humans are already the best and most dangerous prey. That's established precedent in real life,
Hey,
and I think Hunt kind of doubles down on that concept just organically. Because while other players they are sophisticated, they may have tactics that you're not aware of. They can be, I don't know, they can use mines, they can use grenades better than you, or they can um, be using novel weapon types, and that's just not something that you could. Well, I don't think that designing a separate entity type will quite hit that same form of novelty. You know what I mean?
yeah, it could be. Yeah, I see what you're coming from. It still gets me
Yeah.
every time I see people play Hunt when they pull out that dirty ass syringe to heal themselves with.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
ooh.
Listen, Listen, sepsis is going to take a while. Bleeding out will kill you right now. So that's also
Yeah.
before germ theory.
Surprisingly
So the
though,
aesthetic is, yeah.
like as far as Jim's concerned, the Aztecs kind of like figured out that boiling. Well, they didn't really figure it out, but they actually had very few infections when it comes to like treating wounds because they boiled all their instruments before they treated wounds. They didn't know why
Mm-hmm.
it helped, but it worked. So they didn't
Yeah.
know that sterilization was a thing, but they knew that it worked. So that's why they did it. I think they were like one of the first people
Mm,
to actually do that sort of thing. Just a little more random
the,
fact out there.
well, I mean, that is interesting. I mean, a lot of germ theory was like a lot of practices around germ theory were very similar. Because the guy that I believe he was discovered germ theory, or at least formulated it. I think his last name was Lister, something to that effect.
Uh-huh.
He I think he observed the fact that having disinfected or like, cleaned instruments was conducive to having better survival rates in patients. So that's how he sort of intuited of onto maybe we should wash our hands between operations. Maybe
Yeah,
the
the washing
blood
hands.
soak rotting yeah, maybe the blood soak rotting apron isn't really good to have in the presence of open wounds.
Uh, Back in the day, huh? What a
Yeah, and that's
horrible
mind
time to
you,
be alive.
that's the guy. Yeah, that's a guy who managed to have an operation with a 300%, excuse me, with a 200% death toll.
Oh God. Well, that's a.
He was, yeah, I think the legend is that he was performing an amputation on someone and it was non-sedated. And
Oh no, that's still
uh,
worse.
he, Yes, so he was performing the amputation. The guy on the table died of pain shock, and during one of the swipes of one of his tools, he splattered someone in the audience because it was done in a surgical theater with the blood, and the guy had a heart attack.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, at least we don't have to live in those days. It's kind of like, it's funny, like, people say, like, yeah, I want to live back in, like, this time period or that time period. But then when you think about it, it's like,
Yeah.
did you really want to? I mean, they didn't have toilet paper back then.
Toilet paper is probably not even like the top five concern for that kind of environment. But yeah, I see a lot of people pursuing the naturalistic fallacy and not really thinking too deeply about, like, oh yeah, well, in nature we're supposed to do such and such. And my response to that is usually, you know, that in nature our life expectancy is like 20 years tops, right?
Yeah, I feel it's like 30 year considered really old. Maybe. And
Well,
it's if you're
yes.
lucky. But,
Generally, yes, depending on how far back we want to look. I mean, we can look at certain uncontacted or semi-contacted tribes right now and just look at their life expectancy and see how it's panning out for them. Just to see that maybe, you know, industrial comforts are nice. You just need to know how to simulate certain stressors to keep you how should I say that, sufficiently stimulated to make your body function, but not go into ridiculous extents of, oh yeah, all of your food is supposed to be like raw off the branch or fresh off the kill, and that is the optimal way to live because it's clearly not.
yeah. Oh, well, at least we don't have to worry about that these days. Maybe. Until the end of the world happens, then we'll see what happens. Back to the Stone Age.
Uh yeah. Well, I don't think we're gonna revert back to the Stone Age just completely. We still, as a population, even in a scenario of societal breakdown, like people are very good at retaining knowledge. We have a habit of writing stuff down. So even if we were to be thrown back into a situation of, for example, I don't know, like a very strong EMP blast from the sun or something like that, there are going to be casualties, there's going to be societal breakdown, but there's still going to be the expertise and the will to survive and rebuild to a very large extent.
Yeah. I mean, won't recapture what it used to be, but, change is like that. You'll have resistance to that, of course.
Realistically, I think we're going to be we can no longer be thrown back further than the 1950s.
Yeah.
Well, just because there is a wealth of knowledge that is so commonplace that we can't be reverted back to sun worshipping, basically. At least
Sun
not
worshipping.
not in our entirety. Well, just to have like a benchmark. We're no
Yeah.
we can't revert to a state of primitivism where we think that the thunder is the anger of the sky.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Not that crazy.
Yeah.
Unless, like, maybe
Again,
any knowledgeable adult is, killed in just a bunch of orphans that somehow survive, and they don't
yes.
know any better. They don't learn how to read. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. It would have to be a deliberately manufactured scenario of some outside force coming in order to cull the human population and limit our growth. If we're limited to like illiterate children surviving in the wilderness, well, we'll probably realistically just die.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, that sort of kind of reminds you of one of the Mad Max movies where Max just finds a bunch of children. That seeing things like,
Wasn't it, I
oh,
think that was the second one?
yeah, like the before times and, all this crazy stuff.
Yeah. Mad Max is funny because it's not internally consistent in anything it does. Because in the first Mad Max movie, like we're supposed to say, like, okay, so this is the apocalypse,
Hey,
but you also have access to gasoline, there's a police force, and you live in a suburban house with electricity and plumbing.
oh yeah, there was some form of
Okay.
civilization, right? For him in the
Yeah.
first one.
Well, yeah, because he was like coming back to like a normal Australian house and then like in the effective suburb. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't living in an underground prepper bunker, nothing like that. But the outside setting was like if he when he whenever he it was basically South Africa, from
Yeah.
what I understand. Like there was a secluded part that's civilization. Then outside of it, you had like roaming bands. And as the movies progressed, they sort of went away from having those enclaves of what is effectively modern life, and like everything became Mad Max world.
I love that. What kind of genre would you call that? The Mad Max. I
Oh,
mean, of course, clearly it's
uh,
post-apocalypse, but well, what kind?
I would say that it's Fist of the North Star coded.
Yeah, I think that definitely derives some inspiration from that. But yeah, the oil. I'm kind of
I'm
wish
not.
they hit
I'm
it
not.
more.
Yeah. I'm not sure which way it went. I'm not sure which one was first. Was it Fist of the North Star that inspired Mad Max? Because I think it was the other way around. I think Mad Max predates Fist of the North Star.
Let's actually see. Let's see. Did Mad Max come before Fists of the North Star? Decades before the movie was envisioned by George Miller. Uh, so I guess Mad Max came first. Fake.
Yeah,
That's what it says, yeah.
that does check out. I figured. Well, see, a lot of Japanese manga has a tendency of tastefully borrowing certain themes. Like, for example, Ghost in the Shell. It borrows its visual aesthetic pretty much wholesale from Western cyberpunk. It does so very well. It treats the setting very well, and it does apply and it builds on the lore of it very, very significantly. But it still has very undeniable roots in like in Western comics and in cyberpunk. And I think Mad Max and Fist of the North Star have a very similar relationship.
Eh,
Interestingly enough, I think Fist of the North Star did more with the setting than Mad Max ever did.
oh yeah, because it had like a actual story, took the time to flesh it out.
Yeah.
Versus Mad Max, where it's like this conflict that's rushing through just to survive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's fun about it.
Yeah, the new movies, I don't think they're doing much with it. Like they're kind of regurgitating the theme of stuff is happening in the desert and the cars look cool. That's it. They're not really trying to develop the concept any further.
I mean, but that's kind of like the whole point, you know? It's That's just it. Just trying to get through as best you can with, encountering all this crazy madness. The Fury Road, I enjoyed it. I mean, still had the feel of Mad Max. Um, it's definitely had the world of Mad Max and just had just different over the top, bombastic like characters in it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Furiosa was okay. It was still good. I don't know why it didn't do so well because that story by itself it's fine, but I don't know why they would make like a movie based around Mad Max without Mad Max. It's
Yeah.
just I think that's what kind of
I think
killed it
that's what.
because
Well, yeah. It's like making a Batman game without Batman in it.
oh yeah, just focusing around like Robin or something or someone else, but still calling him Batman.
That was actually tried. Gotham Knights was basically that. It was a Batman game with no Batman in it.
What?
Yeah, you didn't hear about that one?
No, wait, what
So
happened?
Gotham Knights is a game. It wasn't developed by Rocksteady. It was done by a different studio, but it's still under that whole premise. It still loosely takes place in the Arkham universe,
Okay.
but it starts with Batman going missing, like allegedly dying, basically. Like
Uh
that's
huh.
the opening scene of the game, and you play the game as the Bat family, that being
Oh.
Robin, I think there's a the current Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, and Red Hood are the primary playable characters. The
Okay.
game is horrendous. It it is a worse
Okay.
game in terms of quality of life, quality of development, the quality of everything. It is just a completely worse game than Arkham Knight.
Wow, it's so bad I didn't even hear about it.
Yeah, well, it came out, it was a meme for a while, and then it just died because nobody cared because it's not a good game. Because the
Hmm.
gameplay loop wasn't there, and it was just visually ugly, and it was a step down in terms of both design and gameplay quality from Arkham Knight, and on top of being just having the ridiculous premise of being a Batman game with no Batman in it.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a Mario game without Mario. What's the calling Mario?
Basically, yeah, essentially it's that. And then you had Suicide Squad that sort of
Oh God,
killed the
please.
genre. Yeah.
Oh man, how did it come from the Arkham series to that, to end it like that? Oh my goodness.
By losing the people that worked on the Arkham series because none of them are at Rocksteady anymore.
Ah, such disrespect to such a really cool series, man. The grittiness is not there.
They wasted Kevin Conroy's last portrayal of Batman
I
on that.
know, that was.
Yeah, we could have just had another Batman game and just
Hmm.
you could have just left it at that. But we had to go through that like a half cooked game. Like the premise was okay. When I saw the first trailers of it, it was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was
But
interesting too. I was like, this might be cool.
it could be well executed, but then you had the bad writing, the bad technical execution, and the bad design, and then on top of that, you also have it being the last appearance of Kevin Conroy's Batman, and that just left a bitter taste in everyone's mouth. And
Yeah, especially how they did Batman dirty. Man,
yeah, well,
it would. If
because it was
Kramer
written by
wouldn't.
people who hate the character.
It's so dumb. I mean, gosh. I mean, if you don't like the character, at least you have to acknowledge the contributions that character made, you know, in history. I kind of respect that a little bit. I mean,
Not only, well, again, the writing had a very clear ideological bias. They had a very clear message that they wanted to translate, and I don't know why. Maybe there was an assumption that a quote unquote modern audience would react better to that, or maybe it was just the writing staff sniffing their own bottled farts.
probably all of that, to be honest.
Mm.
It's still amusing how they're always trying to make these games for a so-called modern audience, yet this modern audience is not buying the game,
Yeah.
and so they're losing money.
So
But they
I
still keep
think,
doing it.
yeah, well, hopefully they're going to keep doing that less and less. Well, for one, Sony killed a game like that. They've recognized that it's a flop and they killed the project while having successful games in their portfolio that did not pander to that audience. So hopefully corporate Sony is starting to figure things out and we're
I
going to see
hope
some
so.
improvements along that line. We also have Wukong, which is like, Monkey Sekiro, which seems to be doing very well.
Oh yeah, that thing is like
Basically,
everyone's loving it. Well, not everyone, but it's doing very well. It's pulling numbers.
I think everyone who spends money on video games loves it. And that's the very important takeaway here, which I hope more corporate entities sort of recognize. They need to go back to the drawing board of understanding that okay, this makes money. You develop like these are components that actually make a good product. A good gameplay loop, good design, a compelling story, and everything else only generates cost. Like
Uh-huh.
having tacked on representation, going through checklists, stories written by people who can't really write good stories, those things generate cost and don't generate return. And it's good that Black Myth Wukong launched in the same window as Concord because it presents a very good contrast, like in the
Oh yeah,
setting of the
that's
market at
that's a
large.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that yes, these are for-profit companies. Unfortunately, once every quarter or once every 6 months, the Dark Lord, known as the Chief Financial Officer,
The
will
Dark
sit
Lord.
down and pour over all of the numbers and all of the financials for a given period because he's supposed to present a report to the shareholders.
Yeah, that's his job on the line too.
Yeah, well, it's his job. I wouldn't say that it's on the line, but it is his responsibility to explain what went wrong and how he's going to fix it, because he is ultimately financially responsible,
Mm-hmm.
and he needs to explain why things are not going well, why stock prices are decreasing, why no dividends are being paid, and he needs to present a plan of correcting that. So basically, whenever a studio like Ubisoft posts losses like that, he's going to go down to the product level and he's going to ask which one of you did this and which one of you needs to be hanged so that this never happens again. Because
Needs
the
to be hanged.
CFO is well, basically, because the CFO is always the adult in the room in any kind of corporate setting, because usually CFOs come from like an audit background. These are very matter of fact people who don't really have a lot of stakes in the product one way or the other, but they do care about it doing numbers. And
Uh-huh.
at a certain point, the financial health of the company is going to be such that he's going to force a course correction, and the more positive scenarios that he has out in the market to compare with, the more likely it is that the CFO is going to come to a conclusion of, okay, maybe shelf all of the pandering shit and just make a good product. Oh, you can't? Well, then you're fired, and we're going to hire people who can actually make a product.
Uh-huh. Because shareholders need that money. That's what they want. So, and the business needs
Yeah,
to
well,
run
because
somehow.
Yeah, because shareholders invested in order to draw dividends, or maybe some of them did that from a speculative perspective, and they're expecting to sell it off at a profit. Either way, they're not going to be terribly happy about the company just continuously posting gigantic losses, which Ubisoft is doing, and therefore the shareholders are calling for the CEO to step down.
Yeah, I heard about that. So, wow, do you think that's gonna happen?
I hope so, because
Eh.
again, I'd like to see good Ubisoft games. I would like the next Ghost Recon to be a good game because I mostly enjoyed the previous one. Even though the breakpoint is seen as kind of watered down, even though it's a little bit monotonous, it's basically a time waster for me at least. But I get to LARP and kit, especially since they have five branded 511 kit, which I find somewhat interesting. I can run around with a gun that I like, which I can either go with my rifle, because the next one should have my rifle platform featured, or I could, LARP with other things that I can't buy just now, because I don't know, Mark 23 costs like $2,300.
Hey,
Mm, and
Heath. Jeez.
I, well, see, that's what you get with it being HK, it being the fancy
Oh,
Navy SEAL
yeah.
gun.
HKs and tourists were being, like, ass expensive.
Yeah, well,
Arm,
also
leg, and a
notorious
kidney for one
to,
of those.
yeah. It's funny
Yeah.
that the MP5 still being priced at what it is, being that the platform is kind of obsolete.
Yeah.
Well, because you have like the Honey Badger that's in a similar sized platform that shoots a rifle cartridge, and the MP5 is still like what 9 millimeter and
9 mil, yeah.
10 millimeter. Yeah, there are 10 mil variants, but they don't.
Maybe it's just because
Yeah,
it's iconic and, that's probably it.
it is. It is. Also, to be fair, there are still full auto MP5s that civilians can own.
Really?
So you can't.
Oh.
Yeah, well, because the way the Hughes Amendment works, it prohibits civilian ownership of pre-ban, oh, excuse me, of post-ban of modern machine guns. And you have
Oh.
like the MP5 was like notorious around that same time. So you have a run of MP5s that were produced before 1986, and they were registered as transferable machine guns, and they're very expensive because more are not being made and there's like a limited supply of them. But if you can drop like $45,000, you as a civilian can own a full auto MP5.
Well, learn something new every day. That's pretty cool. It'd be nice to have just
Yeah.
one of those hanging up just to, say, hey, look what I got.
Listen, I recently got the opportunity to shoot one, and yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have a gun that has a giggle switch on it.
I heard that there's a place in like Vegas or Nevada or something like that where you just go there and shoot guns, but they have like everything. Like stuff you couldn't even
Yeah,
buy
I
for
mean,
yourself.
Well, you have that in a lot of places. I live in Texas, so that's like machine guns are expensive, so not every range will have a rental machine gun, but the nicer ranges usually have rental machine guns.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Vegas, I think, is just more notorious because more people go to Vegas to do other things. And, they
True.
also incidentally happen upon, like, they'll come from a place like California that doesn't have anything, and they'll go to a gun range with people, or maybe they'll be foreign completely, and they'll want to go shooting guns. And since they're in Arizona, it's not Arizona, it's what, Nevada, excuse me, and their gun laws are more lenient, therefore ranges have more stuff, and Vegas being sort of a city of ridiculous extremes, you can shoot an M60 inside of an indoor range, and then you can ride a tank and crush a car.
That'd be fun. It's really surprising how
You
like
can,
a lot of the old guns from like World War II are still very good. Like despite their age.
well, good in what sense? They
Like
function with certain correct care,
a
yeah.
lot of you like 1911 for example.
Well, I wouldn't say that the 1911 is good, especially not the government issue older ones. They're a very finicky firearm. Like they like to be cranky, they like to jam. There's a modern permutation of them, 2011s, which is a basically a 1911 in a 9 millimeter caliber. Those
Hmm.
are, when they're well engineered, when they're well manufactured, even modern 1911s, they're pretty good, even though they are a capricious gun.
Okay. I'd like to see like
Yeah.
things get developed that are kind of like weird. Like weird guns are always really fascinating to me. Like caseless ammunition weapons.
Yeah, that was a fun concept while that one lasted.
Yeah. I wonder why they were was like too expensive or something, or what did that not work?
I didn't. So there were concerns about the casing, or like there were concerns about conserving and protecting the propellant from the elements, because like a good thing about
Oh.
standard cased ammunition is that the propellant is encased in the brass, and the primer is not really vulnerable to the environment, and they store well and whatnot. I believe a concern with the caseless ammo specifically is that they would have a risk of going off
Yeah.
from just environmental heat. Of like, you could shoot a gun enough that the upper, or the chamber of it becoming so heated that the propellant would go off without you having to pull a trigger, and that's like
Oh,
obviously a
jeez.
security concern.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It starts going off, and it's like, whoops, so much for safety. Be careful.
Not yeah, it's not great. It's not great. I'm waiting for something that's a little bit more practically applicable, that's like a bolter, like a high explosive rocket propelled round. That's potentially interesting.
Maybe one day. That'd
And
be hard. You need to have some
there
kind of
were there were
fuel,
att-
maybe, inside those
there
rounds.
were attempts to make that. There were things made in, I believe, the 80s. There is a gun that shoots like little rocket propelled bullets.
Wait, what?
It's called, yeah, there is, I forget the, God, what is the name of it? The jet gun or something like that. There's a gun that shoots.
If it's called the
There
jet
was
gun, that'd
there
be
was a
awesome.
let me look at
I
it
hope it's called the
because
jet gun.
it has the word jet in it. I think it does. Just a sec.
That's
Brandon
hilarious.
Brandon Herrera made a video about that.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
Just a
the jet
second.
gun.
Something like that. It was a concept gun. There were only like 200 of them made, and there was a very limited number of ammo made for them. So like every shot is like $300 now.
Oh my god. It better
The
be like
gyro jet.
gyro jet? That
Yeah,
sounds even cooler.
it's called the gyro jet. Yes, it was completely impractical. It shoots miniature rockets. So the way it works, it doesn't have any kind of like standard propellant in the way a standard round would. So what it does is it ignites the propellant inside of the bullet itself, and it doesn't explode or eject a casing, it starts little engines on the bullet itself that push it forward, that propel it forward, and it even has little stabilizers, so it
Wait,
flies
what?
forward and it hits the target.
It had
Yes,
stabilization? So it didn't spin, it just had
it
fins.
did. It did spin. The
Okay.
stabilizers very specifically gave it that rotation that you would want from around traveling into a target.
So what caliber was this thing? Did it even have a caliber, or was it just something totally unique?
Well, I mean, a caliber is basically just the geometrical size of the barrel that it's supposed to travel through. So I think it was something like the rough diameter of a 50 cal, but
Oh,
naturally it didn't
damn.
have the well, it doesn't have the performance of a 50 cal because significantly less propellant, the speeds are very different, the weight of the projectile is very different. It functions very differently, but
Well,
still
yeah.
very cool as a concept.
I wonder how strong it was, like its effective range. Like, how much damage does that do? You know?
Not a lot, not a lot.
Ah,
The
really? That's
gyrojet was
disappointing. Ah, man.
well, listen, the thing is that the gyrojet was just rejected as a concept, and like no one wanted to invest into making it work because unfortunately brass, black powder, and lead are so cheap that
Mm-hmm.
like it's very hard to compete with the performance of a standard cased ammunition.
So it's just not cost effective to pursue that
Yeah,
project. But you know, it'd be
basically
cool,
yes.
like if it was like if it did come to fruition and it was like the most devastating weapon ever, but it was just so
Listen,
expensive.
he well, they sort of made something similar at some point because the U.S. Army occasionally um, contracts weapons manufacturers to make new things for them, and they did sort of make a gun that shoots grenades. I don't remember if
Hey,
they
what?
were
A gun, not
rock
a
if
launcher?
not a lot. Well, so if we were to abide by the Geneva checklist, you're not supposed to have guns that shoot exploding ammunition. However,
Okay.
that's basically what the DoD almost onboarded for their infantry units.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a grenade launcher on paper,
Mm-hmm.
which was supposed to be able to permeate hard cover. Like you were supposed to be able to shoot a grenade through a concrete wall to then produce an explosion inside of the space that you're penetrating.
Uh-huh.
But that sort of created a gray area of you not really being able to guarantee that none of the grunts are just going to use the grenade launcher as like a direct projectile weapon.
I know, on people. So you can have like things like something like the fifth element just popping people all over the place.
Well, I mean, it would basically just be a bolter.
That sounds wild.
Yeah, yeah. So the technology definitely exists, but there just has to be a will to pursue that. So listen,
Huh?
if they come out with something that even approximates a storm bolter, you better bet I'll be pursuing that.
Oh man. Well, I guess I'll have to take an alien invasion to come around for people to just go no holds barred on weapons development.
Yeah. Another fun thing that I think they don't no longer make those. I think the project died. They were trying to make a handheld railgun.
You need more railguns, okay. Wow, how'd
Yeah,
you get the energy for
and
that though?
I mean, listen, modern batteries are fairly compact. Their power output is respectable. It's usually a problem of coordinating the magnets firing at a like consistent speed. So
Mm-hmm.
someone made a prototype. It was relatively cheap. So
Huh.
I lived outside of the States at the time and I didn't really have like $1,200 to spend on a novelty toy. Um, but someone did make I forget what the name of it is, but it's basically a practical. It's like rifle sized. It's this about the size of a P90,
Okay.
and it shot stainless steel discs, and it
Disc.
would
Oh
propel
shit.
them. Yeah, and it would propel them through a chain of rare earth magnets.
Wow. That sounds pretty scary. Disc.
Yeah,
So
listen,
you're
it's a
cutting.
very good alternative. Um, I don't think they ever made sharp. discs. Like they were just flat discs
Oh, it looks like a puck,
of
like a tiny puck sort of thing.
yeah. Yeah, it
Okay.
basically shoots pucks. Think of it as
Supersonic anything
probably as
going
a
at you is gonna hurt.
oh, it was not supersonic. It was not even nearly supersonic. Like I don't think we have the battery technology to produce those kind of forces just yet. Like it shot them out with respectable force. Like I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of that. Being hit in the face with a barrage of metal pucks flying with you with at any kind of speed that's enough to make a metal puck fly is definitely not pleasant.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's probably comparable to being shot with a beanbag.
Yeah. The prey hurt a lot
So
more too. Jeez.
probably yes, given that they are like uncoated metal pucks. So probably damaging. Wouldn't recommend it to do that.
Maybe it'll
But the
make
technology there.
for a
But
good right weapon. You know, just you'll get out of here,
see,
people.
I mean, there's definitely a use case there. Maybe that's the reason they're no longer produced. Someone just bought up the patent and is slowly working to arm a police force with those.
There you go. Can't have more. Like, didn't they have at one point make like microwave sort of stuff as red deterrents?
I'm not sure. I did
I,
hear about that.
I remember like years ago. I remember
I
there was talk about like how like microwaves, like these big old panels that would just fry people.
I'm not sure if that was the use case. I think there were documents that were leaked about embassy staff being affected by like a short range microwave weapon somewhere. I forget where though. I know it was a US embassy.
Oh
So
shit, for
probably
real? They got
somewhere.
microwaved.
Yeah. I think yes. I think the Soviets were experimenting with microwave-based weaponry, and they were doing that to disrupt the work of an overseas embassy somewhere. But I'm blanking on where exactly that took place.
That's well. I mean, eh, it's unconventional for sure, but I mean, as like a sentry
Yeah.
type unit to lock down like points, security, you know, that'd be
Hmm.
pretty good. And no one wants to get microwaved. You know,
Yeah.
your plate carrier can't protect you from heat.
Well, I had to find that one out the hard way. I ran a shooting comp in the summer, and I
No.
usually run competitions with my plate carrier, and I didn't account for the fact that I have concave plates and they're ceramic plates,
Mhm.
and my plate carrier is like pitch black. It's like just completely asphalt black,
Oh, jeez.
and it was like it was your standard like Texas summer 110 degrees. So the plate carrier soaks up heat very well, and the ceramic plates also soak up heat very very well. And because
Ah.
they're of a convex shape,
Mhm.
they would extrude this heat inside of my body being placed between two concave plates, basically microwaving me alive.
So you're walking oven basically.
Basically, yes,
That
I was
sounds
wearing
bad.
an oven on me.
That sounds so bad.
Yeah, I usually tolerate heat fairly well, but then I started noticing that, my heart's beating kind of hard. And then I looked at I have a continual heart rate monitor, so I just pull that up and I can just look at it at like my heads up display. And I'm like, why is my heart rate like past 130 at rest? That's not normal. It shouldn't
Yeah,
be like that.
that's just maybe just a little bit high. Maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, slightly. With my resting heart rate, I believe averaging around like the low 40s. That was a little bit of an outlier.
Hmm. Like, well, do what about like flechette guns? Do they still make those things?
I'm not sure. I guess a
They,
shotgun is basically that. How
they
would a flechette gun be different from a shotgun?
that's true. Maybe just sharper, just needles. They just train to mincemeat rather than just punch holes in you.
I mean, birdshot does that fairly well. Like birdshot is very specifically well designed for removing a chunk of shit out of a human-sized target.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There are people who experiment with like different designs of shotgun shells. I've recently seen one that has roll pins that are set in. Damn, what was it? So imagine a shotgun shell. There is a row of roll pins that are compacted around a blank round. So when the shotgun shell is shot, it'll throw out that slug. The slug will impact on a target. The blank will go off, and as it's going off, it'll throw the roll pins, well, basically metal pins, into like a flower pattern inside of the target.
Oh, that sounds nasty. Is that
That is
even?
nasty. It does
That's not
produce.
humane. That doesn't sound very humane.
Uh, well, listen, for one, shooting anyone with a shotgun shell is not particularly humane.
That's true.
So
That range.
it does
Yeah.
it does create a very interesting cavitation pattern. However, just simple birdshot does a lot more damage. Like unfortunately, nothing quite beats double odd buck or just shooting someone with a slug.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, one and done, right? That's all I really need.
That's yeah, with the stopping power of a shotgun, that's usually that.
Yeah, what about like other weird guns like the Thunder, for example? Do they even make stuff like that anymore? 50 cal handgun?
Oh, 50 cal hand well, 50, what kind of 50 cal? Because there are 50 cal handguns.
I just know that the Thunder was like one of the first ones and it was really weird looking.
Thunder, let me look that up. I've never heard of that one. There are 50 cal handguns because calibers denote, well, basically they denote the diameter of the projectile. Thunder handgun.
Yeah, Thunder 50 BMG.
Oh, that looks interesting. That looks like a
Yeah,
very
it's
good
weird
way to
looking,
break your
right?
wrist. Triple action breech loaded single shot handgun designed to fire 50 BMG. It looks wildly impractical, but I guess why not?
Yeah, it's always interesting. Arms race, back then where people just make all sorts of weird weapons. It's a fascinating time.
I mean, recently Brandon Herrera made a 50 cal AK.
I heard about that. Didn't like one of the games like steal the design and put it in?
Call of Duty sort of did, yeah.
Oh man, can he get sued for that? I mean, can they get sued for that?
Well, listen, he made a statement about that you know what, it's cool enough just to have it there, and it's like he's just pleased with the fact that someone on the development team saw his gun, thought it was cool, and then included it into the follow-up patch. So he's just fine with the
It's content with just recognition.
yeah, just well, he doesn't even get any kind of recognition from Activision for that one.
Oh
But like,
man.
listen, if you know, you know. There's not a
Yeah.
different 50 cal AK out there. He is the only one who's actually been working on that project for the better part of 10 years. Anyone who's at least, touched upon the subject of guns and gun tube, usually if you try looking into the AK-50, Brandon's name is going to come up.
They should have at least been kind of to give him some recognition in the credits, at least. But then again,
He's
they've been stealing designs and art, so.
Well, it's not even about stealing designs. He's just politically radioactive as a personality, and I think he understands that because he
Okay.
tried running for Congress recently. Well,
Oh.
yeah, he he's also an issue advocate. So like he's actively participating in the political discourse, and gaming. Well, smart gaming companies usually try to steer away from like having any kind of hard stances
True.
in that
Yeah.
particular field. Yeah.
Despite being a shooting game, which is kind of funny.
Mm, there's a level of sensitivity there, and like I understand, like I'd rather respect. Hmm, I identify more with companies that want to keep it strictly professional, like Activision, despite rather than people who try to ham-fist their politics into the product that they're making, because that would be hypocritical of me to complain about. Oh yeah, you have people projecting, like it would be hypocritical for me to complain about people interjecting their political views into the writing of Suicide Squad but then go ahead and demand something that's basically the mirror image of that from a different gaming company.
Oh yeah, just a different subject, but it's kind of like the same type of. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But however, it would be nice if, Activision at the very least acknowledged in some sort of like Easter eggish kind of way that yes, they did pretty much wholesale lift the AK-50's design from Brandon.
Yeah. Well, I guess it happens. I don't know. Battlefield's or not Battlefield. Black Ops 6. I played the beta, and it's okay.
Mhm.
Now I'm just wondering if the
Okay.
weapons they gave us in the beta are it's gonna be the full showcase weapons or what, because that was not impressive. I mean, I like to use LMGs, and other big weapons, when I play
Mhm.
shooters, and I will say though, it was interesting playing with a belt-fed M16, basically. I was like, what the hell is this gun?
Oh,
I'm
I
like looking at this,
remember
I'm like,
that
what
one. Yeah,
is
yeah.
this thing?
I
Huh?
remember being somewhat perturbed by having to look at that. A belt-fed conversion for an AR looks kind of uncanny.
Yeah, I was like, is this real? Did this actually exist?
No, no, it does not.
It does not. Okay, I thought so because I was like, I could have sworn I'm pretty sure I would have seen this before. But I'm looking at this like, wow,
Mm,
that's weird.
I mean, someone could have probably tried to make a bespoke design like that, but it would be an M16 like only an outward appearance because the bolt on a belt fed anything needs to look very differently from what the AR platform is designed to
Yeah,
accept.
yeah. It's like, can this even handle this cycle right now? The heat. I'm like, all these little things. Like, what could it handle this?
The heat is fine. It's mostly about it processing the spent casing,
Mhm.
because basically the way a direct impingement AR works, which the M16 is basically that, is that it's designed to scoop up a round from a magazine, which is like underneath the gun. Basically, it's supposed to strip a gun from the magazine, place it into the chamber.
Mhm.
The propellant goes off, the gases fill the chamber, they push the bolt back, and then the extractor will throw the spent casing through the available breach.
Yeah.
On a belt fed, the bolt is supposed to cycle by stripping the ammo out of the belt that is being fed through one side, and then it's supposed to eject the casing through the other side along
Yeah.
with the clippings of the belt itself. It's just a mechanically
Mhm.
different setup because it cycles differently. Like the M60 does that.
Yeah.
But because of that, the like
Classic.
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit into the form factor of the M16 to have all of that happen there.
Yeah, it sounds like so weird to me. I was like, how does this go through? Oh, well, that's a video game. I guess gets suspend some belief sometimes. So it was just
Sure,
interesting.
sure. Listen, yeah, it's good that the game is trying to experiment with those things. I welcome creativity. I don't think it makes too much sense to try to nitpick them over that. Especially since,
Yeah.
I've honestly I've never not entirely no, so I've never played a mainline Call of Duty game, and I've played Warzone exactly once because I was visiting my childhood home. I didn't pay for Xbox Live, and I didn't feel like paying for Xbox Live just to, play a Halo game I'm not finding particularly fun.
Mhm.
And you could just play Warzone for free. So I tried it. Didn't understand anything was going on because I didn't know the meta. I didn't know what's generally happening. Battle Royale was all the rage at the time.
Ah, yeah.
So that was that was my first and only experience of anything Call of Duty.
Yeah, that's others. I guess because it's Warzone, I wouldn't say that's a very good impression or to base the series off of. I mean, it's still an arcade shooter, just
Mm-hmm.
running gun nonsense. It's hard for your brain to have some fun. Generally the
Mm-hmm.
campaigns are not bad, and I mean it's kind of like James Cameron sometimes, where lots of explosions, over the top stuff, but generally the campaigns are pretty decent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, if you ever get a chance to try it out, they're not bad. I know, like the
Not
Black
Yeah.
Ops ones have some
I'm not
psychological
Prince of.
stuff going on.
Oh,
Yeah, and since there's like the
that's
brainwashing, what's that thing called? The K something back in Vietnam era?
M MK
Yeah,
Ultra.
yeah, about the one. Yeah, that one. That's the play part of it, which is pretty interesting to see.
I'm not. When was that? When did that program take place? I don't think it was. I think it
Green Mirror?
was after the Vietnam era. Well, MK Ultra. I think that was it. If I recall the declassified part of the materials about it correctly, I think it went on well into the 80s.
Yeah. Since Bing Dong, yeah. It's been, yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah, allegedly discontinued.
Allegedly. If things allegedly, yeah. You never know these days,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They may have just changed the name. Something.
I mean, that's very likely. I do enjoy that part of it. I enjoy the fact that it's just accepted American lore that every 50 years the CIA will just come out, declassify materials that completely confirm what was labeled as a conspiracy theory before that, and they'll just go like, "Yeah, we did it. Cry about it."
Yeah, like the UFO things, but everyone knew about, so no one really cared. Yeah, UFOs
Yeah.
are real. Yeah, we know already.
I don't think anyone bought that particular one. I think that one was more of a distraction. That looked like an op, so no one really paid too much attention to the UFO and alien stuff. So we're gonna wait. I think we're gonna have to wait a little bit more for anything that's actually substantial to be declassified.
Yeah, well,
But
after like bodies,
yeah,
bodies and
you
autopsy
know,
reports, it's something.
I think the real way for us to discover anything alien related is for War Thunder to have alien tech featured in the game. You will have
Oh,
someone who is you will have someone who's stationed at Area 51 just dump a bunch of classified materials in the forum the next day, saying that his faction of choice is has to be buffed, and the visual designs are all wrong, and here's how it's supposed to go. This is how fast it reaches Mach speed and whatnot.
oh yeah, the War Thunder guys, that community, they like their specifics. That's what it should. It's a free game,
Yeah,
right?
I think it is. I've never played it. I think it
I
is. Yeah, I think
I
it's a
know
free to play
Atlanta's
game.
pretty popular. I just haven't really looked at it. But I'm really waiting for the next Battlefield game, whenever that may be.
Hmm.
Hopefully they learned their
Hmm.
lesson from 2046 or whatever the hell that was. 2042.
Oh, what was that one about? I've
That's
never played a Battlefield game that wasn't Star Wars.
so it was so in that Battlefield game, like all the ones prior to that, you pick pretty much like your generic soldier with classes. Each class has
Hmm.
their own thing, right? You know, medics have the defibrillator.
Hmm.
Engineers will have like stuff to repair vehicles or ammo and stuff like that. So what they did in the last Battlefield was they went with like the whole hero route. So you did have operators, but then each operator had like weird stuff going on. Like one had like had a turret. You can make a turret. Another dude could call in like drop supply drops. One had those
Hmm.
wingsuits, which is freaking weird, and they all had like really cheesy voice lines. It was pretty bad. They did away with the whole class system, so it became like a hero shooter slash
Aha.
battlefield game, and people tore that thing apart. A lot of the battlefields there was like no cover. There's like a lot of open spaces, very clean looking. Um, Not as much destructible environments. So yeah, I wonder if they liked it that much.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. I've never paid a lot of attention. Yeah.
You never played a battlefield game?
Nope.
Oh,
Well, again, I only played. No, those weren't Battlefield. I tried the Star Wars Battlefield game, and I didn't like it. That's probably my only exposure to Battlefield games at all.
oh, that's probably why. I mean, if you like the chaos, it's the cool thing about the battlefield games is that this is like a spectacle to it. So you could feel the
Mm-hmm.
flow of battle shifting back and forth. And then we have
Mm-hmm.
like sushi placements of like armor coming in or air support. It could definitely change the tide depending on, you know, if someone's a capable driver or pilot or something. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
cool. I like chaotic like games like that. Like Ground War and Call of Duty.
What was it? God damn it. So there were the old Star Wars game that I've mentioned, it sort of had something like that. I think it was called Battlefront 2.
Yeah,
But it
Battlefront.
was like it was yeah. So it sort of had that. The difference was that you didn't redeem that for points or anything like that. You just had set vehicle spawns. So basically,
Oh,
whoever gets into the vehicle gets to use it. But there were also classes that had sort of better predisposition to using specific vehicles. Like, for example, you had an engineer class that had a passive ability that would slowly heal up or give more health to a vehicle that he was occupying. So
uh-huh.
therefore, anyone who spawned with an engineer with a pilot class was always like the preferred guy on the team to take the vehicle because everyone else had combat capabilities and they were like better served in staying on foot.
Yeah.
And there was that interplay to it. But unfortunately, I don't think the Battlefield really managed to capture that because the Star Wars game still made use of basically deploying those vehicles as consumables. So you had to have that, I think, either equipped or you needed to have a certain point balance for the team, and then you were offered to spawn as a special unit or
Oh
as
yeah,
a
the
vehicle
heroes.
unit.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the system they used. I think in the Battlefield games they don't use that system. So periodically
Mm-hmm.
something will spawn back at, that base. So
Ah.
if you're fighting and then you die and you happen to see one there, then you can spawn back way back there, jump in and then use it.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have a point system. That
Mm.
as far as like the engineer healing it over time, that was in previous ones. I don't know if they did away with that because I'm pretty sure that now you have to get out and actually manually repair the thing before jumping back in
Oh.
to continue the fight, which is, fair in my opinion, rather than having like a take stacked with all engineers and that thing just never dying because it's
Mm.
regenerating health the whole time. So I don't know. Well,
Yeah, yeah. It all boils down to being able to sort of congeal into an enjoyable experience for everyone taking part in it. But again, having not played a Battlefield game, I hear good things about the World War I Battlefield games,
oh
even though they
yeah,
took certain liberties. Yeah, but I hear that people who played them, who play Battlefield games, seem to be enjoying them. So, like,
the
I'm
older
not gonna try to
titles.
rain on someone's parade.
Well, if everyone chains these up, I would recommend all the titles definitely.
Mm. That seems
So
to be a running pattern with a lot of long running series. Like, oh yeah, the series is great, but you should probably play the older games. That seems to be a recurring pattern
that
recently.
that's kind of a sad way to look at it, though. You know what I mean? Like, it would make more sense that the newer stuff should be better than the older stuff, but it's kind of wild how.
Uh,
I think there was a survey done recently where I think over like 50% of gamers now prefer playing like older games rather than newer games
yeah,
or replaying older games. It's kind of crazy. I'm like, wow, really? Huh? That's fascinating. Wonder why that is.
yeah,
I mean, partly I kind of hear that they're just running out of ideas to make new IPs. That's starting to become a problem, is what I hear.
I can sort of see that, but at the same time, we're still getting novel IPs coming out just from mostly indie studios. And
Uh-huh.
again, like we need to separate what is the IP, what is the value of an IP as compared to the actual game being enjoyable. Like for example, Halo.
Uh,
Halo is naturally it's a setting, there's a certain story to it, there's like in universe lore, there's a value to the canon, and that is intrinsic to the IP part itself. But like the enjoyment of a given Halo game still mostly relies on gameplay. And
uh-huh.
from my perspective, I think Halo stopped being fun after Reach.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus. Yeah.
Yeah, like whenever Bungie was separated from the property and 343 was reformed, and as older documents are now coming out and some eyewitness testimony is confirming 343 very much did not want to have anything to do with Bungie staff. Like they marketed themselves as basically being the part of Bungie that worked on Halo, but on the back end, they actively dissuaded Bungie staff from coming over to 343 to continue working on Halo. And because of that, sort of from like Halo 4 felt very foreign, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just downhill from there.
Yeah, that's a shame. Like, why would you just like give up a resource like that? A valuable resource that has experience in it.
It was hubris because the people in 343 thought that they could make a better Halo. They thought that they could take the IP and take it to a better place than where Bungie was going with it. And well, looks like
Yeah,
someone bit off more than they can chew.
yeah, and here we are. It's still kind of wild how, like, at
Yep.
one point, one of the devs said that they wanted to make a Halo game that pretty much had the same format as Helldivers 2 is now, but then they were turned down.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They were supposed to make an ODST game about that, and that would have been fantastic.
That would
That
have
would have
been
been
so
so good.
cool.
I think they are actually making a game like that, but I would need to look into it. I'm not sure if it's officially being made by 343 or if it's a fan game.
You know, I don't see why not.
I mean, it's free real estate. Like you release a game like that and if you make it well, if it plays well, that thing will print money. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
a fun Halo game. We haven't seen that in the better part of for the better part of 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and it could be like a direct competitor to Helldivers 2, you know?
yeah, like steal Helldivers, steal their thunder. I think they should go ahead and do that. Like as much as I like Helldivers as a concept, I think that I would rather have a fun Halo game to play. I would like to have a Halo game that I look forward to playing
Mm-hmm.
because Infinite turned me off multiple times. Which is sad because Infinite looked like a return to roots,
Uh-huh.
but it just fumbled so badly.
What happened? Was it like didn't play it right? Or the feeling or what happened?
Ah, so the campaign was pretty good. If I like, they've attempted to correct certain wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of a meet in the middle kind of thing because they didn't want to retcon the lore that was bad. Like they refused to retcon the bad story writing that happened
Oh no.
in Halo 4 and 5. Listen,
Uh-huh.
it's fine because I assume you don't care for spoilers, so I can go
Yeah,
into
go
the
ahead, go
nitty
for
gritty
it.
of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, they've just made a new Cortana, a new
Eh.
non-rampant Cortana, which is just sanitized of all of the shit. She still has the same personality, the same voice actress. It is just a new Cortana without the baggage, and they kill the old Cortana off screen. Kind of
Oh
disrespectful.
no. Off screen? I hate it when they do that.
I do too, but if you give me a good Halo game with the core gameplay in a sandbox, I am willing to hold my nose and just go with the premise. Like that was fine on the face of it. I was okay with that proposition. I wasn't happy with the proposition, but
Mm-hmm.
it was fine. It was better than the alternative of having to take on the horseshit story of Guardians on its own terms. So they did that. They've they've introduced a giant open world with quest hubs,
Uh-huh.
and it gave you the flexibility of sort of solving specific problems in the environment through an RPG esque system with the weapons that are available to you, and you can accumulate weapons. You can build up an infrastructure of forward operating bases. You could recruit Marines and take Marines with you, and the AI for the Marines was pretty good when it came to operating vehicles. Like it had the inklings of being fun.
It sounds good on paper.
It sounds good. Well, because my big gripe with 343 Halos is that they were extremely linear
Eh.
and they did not leave any room for player creativity. For example, in Halo 3, you have a sandbox and it is up to you as the player to break the sandbox over your knee to solve they give you a sandbox to give you point A, point B, and how you get there is up to you. as
Mhm.
opposed to Halo 4 and Halo 5, where you will only use a vehicle in what we determine to be a vehicle segment, and
Oh, yeah.
only like you will have fun in the way that we allow you to have fun, and that is the only way that will happen. Like there are
Huh?
very few instances where you can try to break the sandbox by playing intelligently and overcoming things as opposed to just having to brute force them with like your small arms or whatever.
Yeah.
um like we're not touching on things like level skips because level skips are not they're not intended gameplay, but older Halo games still had emergent gameplay. Like if I'm good at the game, I can run into an area that's supposed to be difficult on the face of it, and then I commandeer a wraith tank and I
Mhm.
blaze through this area a little bit more easily, but I'm rewarded for skillful play for pulling that off, which if you go back to the source material, is how Spartans are supposed to function. They're super soldiers that have that capability of just sprinting full tilt through a battlefield, yanking the pilot off of a tank, commandeering a tank, and then using that to gain battlefield superiority. That's how a Spartan is supposed to operate in combat, as opposed to just sticking to operating small arms. And
Yeah.
Halo Infinite in the story part sort of allows you to do that, which is good. That was a step in the correct direction. But nothing ever materialized. There was never any campaign DLC. The campaign sort of just ends, and you're just
Huh?
left with searching for collectibles in the environment. That's about it. It just
One and
goes
done, huh?
nowhere. Yeah, it's fun for like the 10 hours of gameplay that you have there, and that's about it.
Oh.
And on
Hmm.
top of that, it released